morning.
Your name, false sports?
I'm Anna Cheney.
I think I read your bio with your son.
She's
Yeah.
I have older ones too, but she's
What year are you? Started the application yet?
I've done it once, didn't do it quite right.
This is, so you're the first in your family to go to college?
Not at all. Each one's completely different.
I guess I get the picture of this.
You all live here with it?
That's right.
You worked at the zoo. That was that. Is that an internship or a job? You do that during the school year? What type of work do you do there?
Well, it is the 9 o'clock hour, and want to be respectful of everyone's time and get started on time. Want to welcome panel members back. Want to welcome our collaborators that we have today. I'm excited about who we have around the table for conversations today. I think this is going to be very, very exciting. As I mentioned last week, by the end of this process, and I think it's important because I've had conversations in the time since the last meeting, by the end of the process, we hope to establish pathways that create an educated and talented workforce for our state, able not just to meet the needs of business and industry, but also higher education, and also our students able to reach success in whatever they're chosen, whatever success means to them as students. I think it's important. Our discussion today is going to focus on just how we make those pathways attainable to our students. I'm so excited that we have students around the table today. I'm excited about that. Love hearing from students. I think that's where it happens, right? And so I've told all them, one of my things to them was to not be quiet today. Okay? We want to hear you. If it's on your mind, we want you to be saying it and talking about that. And we'll have a chance here. We'll go around the table real quick in just a second. But it's extremely crucial that we hear your voice. It's extremely crucial that we hear the advocates for students around the table and the advocates for this process that we have here as collaborators today. Because we know that still many of our students struggle when they leave school, and we want to, again, that was the whole premise behind these pathways, was to find a way that we can help all students be successful, again, whatever their chosen field and what they want. Look forward to robust conversations today. Want those to happen as they did the last time. And so a couple of other things that I would bring up real quick here is, one, I've been told that when you speak, we do have, last time, we had some mic challenges. Please speak into the microphone if you need to shift it around a little bit. If you can hear yourself coming through, then you're okay. That's what they've told me. So and they always tell me they have to turn me down whenever they come on. So let's strive for everybody to be turned down so that everybody out there can hear as we go. The other housekeeping that I would give just really quickly, and it's in the notebooks and packets, but I just wanted we did establish some norms at the first meeting, and I just want to hit on those real quick. And that's assume positive intentions, take an inquiry stance, ask questions, ground statements and evidence, timely responsiveness, communicate. Again, if you've got something to say, let's make sure that we say it. I think that's important. Allow for give and take. Address issues, not personalities, because it's not personal. This is important work for kids, not personal. And then respect the mountain. This is a big deal and a lot of work, and I know it seems ambiguous at times as we go through, but I think it's important that we respect the work. And so, as is best practice, you had bios in your packet, and so we're not going to take time to learn about everyone. That would be something that you can do. But just so that if somebody, I know we've had to make a couple of changes and different things as we go along, would just like to go around the table and quickly just say who you are, who you represent, what school you're from, those kinds of things really quickly, and I'll start.
Tim Brown, State Representative, Crawfordsville, Indiana.
David Freitas, Indiana State Board of Education.
Alan Taylor, Director of Superintendent of Education, District 45.
Beth Megashar, I'm with Education and Training with the Department of Workforce Development.
I'm Jana Goebel, and I'm the Director of College and Academic Services at Irvington Preparatory Academy and Special Ed Coordinator for the corporation.
I'm Rosa Koa, I attend Ben Davis High School, and I'm also representing Area 31 Career Center.
I'm Trident Martin, a senior student at Prairie Central Junior High School.
Danisha Posey, Indiana Civil Rights Commission. I'm Deputy Director and General Counsel.
Caleb Pearson, I'm here representing Ivy Tech and Hartwood Manufacturing.
Good morning, I'm Kim Dodson. I'm the Executive Director for the Arc of Indiana.
Amy Marsh with NGT Education Consulting Group.
Anna Cheney, I'm a parent of a student at IPS School 14.
Mary Gardner, I'm with Stand for Children.
Caitlin Bowe with the Institute for Quality Education.
Sydney O'Day with Wayne Township, Indiana.
Francisco Guerra with Ben Davis University High School and Vincennes University.
I'm Alma Torres from Ritter.
I'm Ben Potts with the Archdiocese of Indianapolis. I'm sitting in for John Elsesser with the Indiana Non-Public Education Association.
Vanessa Johnson representing teachers for Perry Central Junior Senior High School.
Carol Auslander, Vice President of Education and Workforce Development for the Indiana Chamber of Commerce.
Jason Bierce, Indiana Commission for Higher Education.
Jennifer McCormick, State Superintendent of Public Instruction and Chair of the State Board of Education.
Dennis Cruz, Indiana State Senator, District 14 in Northeast Indiana.
BJ Watts, I'm a teacher in Evansville and serve on the State Board of Education.
Alicia Komovich, State Board of Education staff.
All right. Well, thank you. Again, welcome. If you notice on the agenda, it says a review of August 10th meeting, and I was going to have Mike Flesh, our graphic recorder, do that. He had a flight get in late from where he was yesterday. He will be here, but it's going to be a few minutes late. So I'm going to take that on as just a quick review for us. And if you have the opportunity, you might check out the review. A much better review than I could ever do verbally is in the recordings that are actually posted at the back of the room and that are in the packet from the last time. But I just thought there were a few things that would be worthwhile to point out. And again, these are not in any particular order, actually using the graphics as that. Is one of the things that we talked about last time is the gap between when students are at the end of their schooling, knowledge and skills, and then what is needed in business and industry or higher ed. And that's one of the reasons why we're here. That's one of the reasons why the legislature gave us that task. And then the other three things that really came out last time and almost became themes, if you will, was responsiveness, nimbleness, and fluidity. And so I also use the word porous for that. But responsiveness, nimbleness, and fluidity, that we need those things to be there in order to meet the needs of our students. And so, and then really the big theme that continued to come out was that flexibility and this idea of even stackability and stackable skills, stackable credits, and those types of things for our students were very important. And I think it's important to point out that it was also talked about, and I would hope that we would continue to really think this way as we work through this. Remember, this is a system in motion, and that was exactly what was said. I think it was Jason that said that, is that we want to continue to think about what are the possibilities, what are needed. Let's not throw the barriers up yet. let's think about what's needed, what could we be doing, what should we be doing for our students, and think about that with intentionality and again, that flexibility piece in there. And then we ended with a set of, everyone had values, and so I want to tell you this just so that you're prepared for it. At the end of the meeting, the last thing that we will do is we'll go back around the table. It's amazing how many people, I got emails about this, they really liked that we did that. And so I'm excited about that. We will go around the table and everyone will give a value that they got out of today and what they want a value to be moving forward for this panel, okay? So please think about that, and I think, and again, you can see them from the review, but values like flexibility, practical, clarity, concise, include employers, make sure that we include employers, include higher education, that we want to make sure that we've included in that. So think about those values as we go through today, and what you want those values to be moving forward for this group. So at this time then, let's move into our public comment. And again, just to give a few things there, we're going to give 3 minutes per, and so we want to get through all of them that we can get through. I don't know how many you got. 4, okay. So we will have plenty of time. And so again, we value those public comments. We would like for you, there is a chair right down here by Kim. And Kim, if you, either that microphone there on the end you could do, thank you, or one or the other. And so that's where we'll do public comment from. And with that, we'll start that.
David Mingle, Northwood High School.
Good morning. I'm David Malgold. I'm the principal at Northwood High School in Napanee, Indiana, and for those that don't know where Napanee is, it's about 13 miles south of Elkhart, about 2.5-hour drive north of Indianapolis. I'm fortunate enough to have a Christian supportive community with a large Amish population that attends K-8 but doesn't continue through high school. Prior to becoming an administrator, I was a math teacher for 10 years. I was awarded the National Presidential Award for Excellence in Teaching Mathematics and Science. And just recently, this last year, I was the Indiana Principal of the Year for the state of Indiana. The idea of creating graduation pathways beyond a single assessment ECA conceptually has merit. But please consider some of the roadblocks that you will face in this development. The first bullet point I'd like to talk about is the ECA continues to be a graduation exam. It must have a purpose for 9th and 10th graders. Allowing the graduation pathways to enter the picture after a 10th grade year would allow a purpose. However, just like today, if a student is identified earlier than when the graduation pathway may be offered, 10th grade, the schools would continue to modify the student's 4-year plan as needed in their annual meeting with their counselors. Graduation pathways must have flexibility. 3 ways that it needs to be flexible. The flexibility must exist in options for students based on the school's ability to provide facilities, programs within their school and their local community. Flexibility must exist for students to move between graduation pathways. And flexibility must exist for the transient student who does not have a choice sometimes to be moving from school to school throughout the school year. Recognition of the regional needs should be a part of graduation pathways, but not limited to the regional needs. Addressing the opportunity for access. I realize that there needs to be a measure of choices and opportunities against that opportunity for access. However, let's think about this example. All students in every school in the state of Indiana completing an internship. Is that reasonable? The answer is obviously no. In our current school system, we have approximately 50 students who have an internship each trimester, and we have a very difficult time getting everyone an internship, especially in their interest. And if we had to do that for all 200 students in each grade level, it's not even feasible. we have the issue of also when you do internships and you do it on a larger scale, the capacity to actually manage that system is very difficult. I would like to think today's, so do I stop?
Finish your thought.
Okay. She threw me off. So I have a couple quick bullets I could say if you're okay
Say
with that.
the quick bullets.
Okay. So acceptance into the following should be a graduation pathway. So if you're looking at acceptance into college or university, that should be a part of it. Acceptance into the military should be a part of it. Acceptance into the workforce should be a part of it. However, with the workforce, there should be a commitment from the employer to demonstrate a model or a matrix that allows a student to move from an entry-level position to at least a mid-level management position. And then the last point would be additional tests should be considered, but I realize the opportunity for access may be a difficult part. So when you talk ACT, SAT, PSAT, that may be difficult if you measure it against that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments.
Todd Best, Principals Association.
Good morning, everybody. Todd Bess, Executive Director with the Indiana Association of School Principals. Appreciate the time of the panelists today and the next 6 meetings as well. That's a tremendous commitment for our kids. Thanks to our students who are around the table today too, taking time and lending your voice to this important discussion. Just from the last meeting, a couple observations. It's been emphasized, but I'll emphasize it again because this is what our principals are telling us, is the flexibility around these pathways is just a real key. Within those 4 years of school, we have students entering that are 14, 15, and they make lots of decisions early, and then they change those decisions 3 or 4 or 10 times, sometimes within the month, right? Let's keep that in mind. Let's account also for mobility. You talked at the last meeting a lot about regional work, and that's important, yet our kids are moving daily at times about where they're going and how we're going to try to meet those needs. And even the Indianapolis market to the Fort Wayne market to the Evansville market is very, very different in what they need, even though they're large urban centers. And I think also I heard around the broad scope of skills and the broad nature of what our employers desire. That flexibility. Some wanted certifications, the absolute paper. Some wanted the coursework background. Some wanted just the interest and the ability to be there on the job, be financially solvent so they can get there every day. That flexibility is also key. The idea of equity, I think, also is important. The inherent challenges our principals know with these 14 and 15-year-olds, what they're bringing from a family nature, responsibility, their school involvement is key. One thought around the internships, and Dave just commented on that, requiring everybody to do the internships I don't think was necessarily the idea in the pathway option. It could be an option. So for Dave, those 50 internships are very valuable for those kids, and that might be a good option for a student who could not meet the ECA passing score or another graduation pathway. But having that for everybody starts to become a stressor, I think, in our school world. So keep those as options and flexibility versus requirements on a diploma. As we looked at those menu of options listed in the pathway in March with Representative Boehning, they seem to resemble this, that those that can meet the ECA, keep going, pushing them higher. We want academic honors for those higher post-secondary institutions like they mentioned last week. Those that can improve and meet that score with a very minimum of effort, let's allow them that opportunity, because again, that opens the doors for those internships, those experiences, those pathways as you guys determine. And then also considering those that have always struggled.
Finish your thought.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the idea that we can allow for passing the test to meet an ECA, to meet a pathway, versus having to pass the test. I think we can think of many students who are well below a cut score on that, and having them test repeatedly over something that's going to be very difficult for them seems to be a challenge and not best for kids, but giving them these alternate pathways does make sense, and creating those will be worth it for Indiana. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jeff Butts, Wayne Township.
Alicia, I'm gonna make your job easy. Mine's about 2.5 minutes, so we'll be. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeff Butts. I'm the superintendent of the Metropolitan School District of Wayne Township. I also am proud to serve as the president of the Indiana Association of Public School Superintendents and the past president for the Indiana Urban Schools Association. It's been a pleasure to be engaged in the dialogue regarding these new graduation pathways dating back to the last session in the development and the passing of House Enrolled Act 1003. As well as in conversation with my colleagues regarding the State Board of Education's work during the recent board meetings and working sessions surrounding ESSA, and most recently as I've spoken to superintendents across the state regarding this panel's work in our first meeting and the upcoming 7 meetings, this meeting and 6 more that will be occurring. I also had the pleasure to be asked by the Department of Education to serve on 2 of the ESSA subcommittees as they were developing the plan to be submitted to the governor for his approval before being sent off to the Department of Education. It's an understatement to say that there is no question that you have your work cut out for you on this panel. Further, the recommendations that you will be making to the State Board in December and that will potentially lead to changes in Indiana code will more drastically change the opportunities and options available for our graduates than we have seen in decades. To that end, one clear message that has now been mentioned 3 times, and I'll mention it a 4th, is during your last meeting that you provide flexibility. My colleagues across Indiana understand the need for this option and all options available as well. However, we also understand the reality that every community in Indiana has unique opportunities and challenges. The flexibility to have those options that can be implemented for our students and our districts is extremely important. An ability to maintain the local control remains an important factor among our superintendents and our school boards. At the conclusion of the last meeting, as Chairman Ernest mentioned, he asked each one of you to list out your values or to share your values. And I believe Representative Brown had the pleasure to be the last one to offer up his values. And one of those that he shared was to challenge the status quo, if I recall. And I think that could not be more true, and we could not agree more. We're excited that you will challenge the status quo to get away from this one-size-fits-all model that has led to our diploma under the No Child Left Behind Act. That we no longer have this narrow pathway that everyone must follow to the graduation diploma. That we empower our locally elected officials and district leadership to maximize the opportunities that are unique to their communities. That you will open the door wide for those Indiana scholars who are pursuing post-secondary education, post-secondary employment, and post-secondary military service. We thank you for your service on this committee and for the opportunity to share the thoughts from superintendents across the state. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Al Remley, Clinton Central Junior Senior High School.
Good morning, I'm Al Ramaley. I'm the principal at Clinton Central Junior Senior High School, Michigantown, Indiana. It's up near Frankfort. Dr. Ernest, I believe you might have been taught there for a few years.
Sure did.
So, I'd like to address one of the options. I think it's been discussing this with the ECA pathway. At Clinton Central, when the students pass their GQE or ECA, we do not stop to encourage them to do more. I think one of the comments last time was ECA is nice, but we want more. And we continue to want them to do more. We see this as a door opener and are constantly encouraging and helping them to determine possible career tracks. Many of our students decide that their career track includes post-secondary education, and we provide several advanced classes for them. We even have an agreement with Ivy Tech where Clinton Central School Corporation will pay for 2 classes a year for our students while they're in high school. However, being in a rural, blue-collar community, many of our students pass their ECA, obtain their diploma, and stay in our community to work. And they work at one of the industries in Frankfort, maybe one in Kokomo, one in Lafayette, or they just go back to the local farm-related businesses that are the lifeblood of our community. I've been a principal in that general area of the Kokomo, Lafayette, Frankfort area for all of my 18 years in administration, and I've tried every year to get the factories in the Frankfort and Lafayette areas to offer some sort of pathway for our students to go directly into their business. Most recently, I contacted 2 major industries in Frankfort through our local Chamber of Commerce, and pleaded with them to partner with our county schools to provide our students with a way to achieve job training specific to them. Wouldn't it be great for our high school students to spend part of their day learning about the company, being trained by the company, and receiving any certifications required by the company? These industries could create their own local workforce and expose our students to the requirements of the job, and upon graduation, the student is gainfully employed, and the company knows that they have an employee who could fit or who could hit the ground running. This sounds like a great plan, but every employer in that area said, all we want are students with a high school diploma or the equivalent. Once we get them, we will train them. None of these local employers required any certifications from our new hires. I mentioned that many of our students take and pass the OSHA safety courses. The employer said that was great background knowledge, but any new employee would still have to take the exact same test once they were hired. So my point is this: we still work extremely hard to get all of our students to pass. We still work extremely hard to expose our students to the rigors of post-secondary education and the workforce. We want our students to succeed, but many of us really struggle with the idea that our students may be required to complete a pathway that means nothing when they get hired by a local business. I'm not sure which industries require industry certifications or are pushing these, but I can tell you that the ones in my area, they really don't care that any of these students have them. The industries still put my students who have passed the ECA and received their diploma through the exact same training program as Joe Blow off the street.
Was that your last thought?
I got one more.
Give your last one.
All right, my last thought. So we'll still educate our students on the importance of good employability skills, being to work on time, working 40 hours a week, being a good member of the community. But what I guess is we just want to make sure that the flexibility that we've all talked about is still there, because the employers in our area, they really don't care that our students, when they come there, have the certifications that are a big push, throughout the state right now. Thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts.
Thank you very much.
Rob Staley, The Crossing.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to address the board. And it's really good to see we have students around the table, because that's a great value to know what our students really believe and think. My name is Rob Staley. I served as a high school administrator for 22 and a half years, and I love public school education. I also highly value the fact that we think all kids should finish school, and we have too many kids in the state of Indiana that are not succeeding and are not completing their high school careers. I developed a model called the Crossing School of Business and Entrepreneurship in 2003 and grabbed a team of public school educators with a great passion to service all students in the public school, even those who have not been successful. Over the last 13 years, we've serviced over 10,000 students in Indiana, and most of those students have been dropouts. They needed something different. They needed a different model. And you know what they really needed? They needed to learn how to work. So we have created a model in our organization that says you go to school for half a day, you earn a diploma in academics. You also are assigned to a job training center where you're actually in a live situation where you're working in manufacturing or a business, and that we have a faith-based component that's tied into that. What's different about our organization is we don't focus so much on pathways. Actually, we talk a lot about survival before we talk about pathways, because that's where we're at. We're dealing with students who are trying to deal with life day after day, and they need to talk about other things besides just what their pathway is. What we want to teach them is 10 soft skills. Our students are all very well aware that we have 10 things that we're focusing on. We want them to be job ready by being a good listener. We want them to be self-initiative. We want them to understand safety rules. And we focus on 10 soft skills instead of specific pathways, because when our students leave our organization, they can go to any pathway. What we're hearing from manufacturing is they're most interested in kids understanding and being able to practice and being competent in 10 soft skills, so when they land at a location, they will train them on what they want to do. So we take the idea that if we could teach them the basics, the 10 soft skills, when they get there, they'll understand and be able to be trained on what they have to do. So what we started to do is continue to survey our manufacturers and businesses throughout the state of Indiana. We then decided that we wanted to go to our businesses and ask them if they would just host a school. So in 7 locations in Indiana at this time, we now run schools in businesses. What that means is they build or give us a space of about 1,000 square feet. We have a little family room where we have couches and a living room. We do our academics in that arena, and then we go work. We are now creating a reputation in this field that we have so many demands to run schools inside, embedded inside manufacturing plants, that we can't fulfill all of them because we don't even have enough students. So in Thor Manufacturing in Elkhart, Indiana, they have 14 plants. They're committed to have 14 different schools. What's really fun about that is our students are not only in academics, but after they walk out of that day, or the school day, and actually get their diploma at the end of the year, they stand in front of Thor Manufacturing, the people they work with every single day in a real live manufacturing plant, and they hold up their diploma and they say, "Hi, my name is Steve. I graduated from the Crossing at Thor Manufacturing." Thor Manufacturing gathers their 90 employees. They stand up and cheer, and our students are on stage. Greater than that is, our students are being assigned now a permanent job and walking away with non-poverty rates of making $14 to $15 to $18 an hour. So we don't only believe that academics is important, we also would believe that job training is important, and more than that, we want every student that leaves our organization to be assigned to a job, and they're now having their feet on a career path. Unfortunately, the students that we draw off the street, most of them struggling in public school, many of them have failed in a lot of great ways. Of course, coming to us with a 3rd to 5th grade reading level, they need additional support, and their greatest struggle in life is passing ECA. We have a robust ECA remediation program. We take every kid in an individual plan, and we're working day after day after day. But when it's all said and done, you're moving 17, 18-year-olds that come to high school, and you find them on the street with 5 credits. You have to get them up to the ECA pass rate. And what we do at the very end is we struggle with this thing called a high school waiver. What do you do with a kid that has all of his credits? He's worked really hard. He has an assigned job. He has job skills. He's ready to go in life, but he didn't pass the big exam. We appreciate the fact you're sitting around the table having those discussions. That's really, really important to us because we do get confused as public school and private school people when we talk about waivers. It is tough. We watch the kids work hard. We watch them perform. We watch them do everything they're supposed to be doing, but there's the test. And then we have to decide, are we going to give this kid a waiver? If we can figure out a way that we don't have to address this waiver issue on every one of these kids, and that we can create a system that allows them to have multiple certifications. By the way, when you're working in real manufacturing, you learn how to run a forklift and you get a certification.
To be fair to everyone,
Sure.
our time, can you bring your thoughts to a close?
I will do that. Thank you. My proposal is, thank you for hearing this. Thank you for considering kids that are coming back to education and having a second chance in life, and that they are really behind the 8 ball when it comes to ECA, but there are other pathways that they can perform in. And by the way, these kids are our all-star workers in the state of Indiana. I also have a student that I brought with me today that can talk to you about Gaylord Electric and how they're hosting one of our programs. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sam Gaunt, The Crossing.
I'd like to thank all of you guys at the board for allowing me to present today. I'm a student at the Crossing. I've been here for a full school year, and in 9th grade, I left my previous school because of a lot of depression and anxiety. So I was truant for a long time, and then I withdrew. And this is in 9th grade. And then for a couple of years, I just did absolutely nothing. I just struggled with my depression, and I dropped down to like 90 pounds and just laid in bed and stared at the ceiling all day. And my mom's friend told me about the Crossing, and it is like, it's just given me a new motivation to help get through high school, because when I first came to the Crossing, I had like maybe 4 credits out of my 40, and I'm up to 23, 24 credits now in 1 year of schooling. So I'm on track to graduate on time, even though I'm 2 years behind. And it's just helped me gain those really good, really important soft skills for after high school because of being able to work with Gaylord Electric. What we do on the work team, we are doing prefabrication, so we're assembling all the parts that their work teams need to go to job sites and install. Up in Noblesville, there's an IKEA building, and it's being newly built. All the electrical is being done by Gaylor Electric, and we're manufacturing those parts for them to take into that store and actually install. And we're able to work with a lot of great people in that company and just help them out because they've got a lot of work that they're allowing us to do, and it's just very, very helpful for people like me who are really focused on their life after school. And being able to make all these connections with these people, it's helping me get ready for after high school, for like getting a job. A lot of things that are taught at the school, like soft skills, I'm able to better fill out a resume, and it's just really helped. And that's all I had to say.
Awesome. Thank you so much for giving that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
All right. Thank you for those public comments. We appreciate that. Those were great. I took lots of notes from them. Next thing on the agenda, and this came in the last meeting, we realized that it would be good to do this. So we had asked Jason Bierce to send out some data that they had that he had referred to. And so we've also asked him, and I believe everybody has this copy as well. We've asked him to walk us through that data so that when we're referencing and we're talking about that, we're all on the same page. So with that, Jason, I'm going to turn it over to you, and we can have I'm guessing, discussion during that if anybody has questions in that, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the panel. I appreciate the opportunity to share a few highlights related to this data. I'll try to keep my comments as brief as possible so we have as much time to hear from the students and parents, which I know is the focus of today. As the chairman indicated, there's a sort of a one-page best of highlights here, but this is just sort of scratching the surface in terms of the data that we've been producing, not only at the state level, but at the county level, the school corporation, and at the high school level for about 10 years now. This has been part of sort of an ongoing commitment, not only by the commission, but by the Department of Education, the Department of Workforce Development, to paint a more comprehensive and clear picture about what happens to our students after they leave our K-12 system. So this is bucketed in sort of the three main areas: access, readiness, and completion. First, in terms of college going rate, for many years, Indiana lagged the national average in college going. I'm pleased to say that although we're not quite at the national average, we're just a little bit below. Nationwide, the college going rate's about 66%. We're just a 1 percentage point below that. If there's a little bit of additional good news beyond that, in recent years, we've actually started to see some of that stagnate with our other state peers, but we've managed to sort of hold the line at that 65%. This map is an attempt to sort of contextualize that a little bit regionally. Unless you've had LASIK recently, you probably can't read it too well. But dark blue is good, dark gray not so good. But at our high end, about 82% of our students are going directly on to college. At the low end, about 41%. But statewide, somewhere between the vast majority and the plurality of our students are going directly on to college. One of the comments that came up at the last meeting was, where do our students go to college? The vast majority attend college in-state, close to 90%. 88% either went to a public 4-year, 2-year, or private, nonprofit, or for-profit college. And how we know that is not only do we have the data that is reported to us by our colleges, by the high school, but we have a contract with the National Student Clearinghouse to be able to see where students go nationwide. But the vast majority, as I said, attend college right here in Indiana. Of course, the crux of a lot of these discussions are around what degree are students ready for college. For a number of years, we've had a fairly significant remediation challenge in the state. The majority of that is concentrated around mathematics, and you can see that broken down here. Of our students who need remediation, which is about 1 in 5 statewide, that number has actually dropped a fair amount over the past 5 to 10 years. But when we take a closer look, we see most of that change coincided almost identically with when the community college sort of reevaluated how they deliver remediation. Not to get off on a tangent for a second, but for a number of years, not only here in Indiana, but nationwide, students who were not quote-unquote college ready will be placed in a series of standalone remedial courses, and many of those students who started remediation never got out, and most of those students never graduated. Ivy Tech, starting about 2013, sort of completely overhauled how they deliver remediation in two ways. One, they developed math pathways, which I think is something that will probably come up in these conversations, that not every student needs a calculus type pathway, that there's different paths in terms of the top level of mathematics students need in order to be successful based upon their career interests, their aspirations, etc. But math pathways, one. Two, they went from these series of standalone remedial courses to something that's called a co-requisite model, which is basically embedding the remediation in with the college level course that actually counts towards their degree or certificate. Ivy Tech should be here to take credit for this as well, but they went from less than 20% of their students who were remediation ever getting out to now they're 60, 70%. So very significant progress in a relatively short time. Of course, that preparation level varies significantly by diploma type. You can see here that about 3% of our college-going students who finish an honors diploma need remediation. We'd argue that as the honors diploma, maybe even that number is a little too high, but it certainly pales in comparisons to our students with a 440 or a general. About 1 in 5 of our 440 students are needing remediation, and about half of our general diploma students. And again, not only does that mean that it's likely taking students longer and costing them more to continue their education, but what concerns us most of all is the possibility that students finish with debt and no credential whatsoever.
Jason,
Yes,
I'm
sir.
going to interrupt you, sorry, because I'm being told they're saying it's hard to hear.
Really?
So you might pull your mic to you on the live stream and that. So sorry I interrupted your thoughts there. I just wanted everybody to be able to hear.
No, quite all right. I'm happy to backtrack it as needed. Moving beyond the readiness numbers into completion, and this is one of those it's hard to summarize, but there's a number of different ways to look at this. This is actually probably one of the most generous looks at our completion rates because it really kind of takes the long view. What this shows is by diploma type, both at our 2-year colleges and our 4-year colleges, to what percentage of students graduate. And this is looking over a 6-year time horizon because we know that many of our students, particularly those who start at the community college, will go part-time, but when we're talking 6 years for a 1-year certificate or a 2-year degree, that's a pretty significant time window. But nevertheless, the story is much the same. We see that at the high end for honors diploma students, about 82% of those students are graduating that 6-year window, 60% at the 2-year college. Significant drop from that honors diploma to the 440 diploma, where it's just under half at the 4-year colleges and under a third at our 2-year colleges. And then of course, where the numbers are most concerning are for those students who finish with the general diploma at the 4-year level, 20%. And I should say that these include not only students who start and finish at the same institution, but those who transfer. So this is really trying to take the most holistic, most comprehensive look at the numbers. If we looked at just students who started and finished at the same campus on time, which is increasingly what we as a commission are looking at, is what percentage of our students graduate on time. Because again, we know the longer they're in the school, less likely they are to graduate, and the longer they're in school, the more it's going to cost them to earn that credential. But the numbers drop precipitously when we look at that on-time window, as low as single digits for our 2-year students at the general diploma level, and as high as just over half at the 4-year college level. If you leave with nothing today, I would hope it would be the last chart on here, which is our state education attainment rate. This is the percentage of our adults who have some form of education and training back beyond high school. So again, usually my boss starts with this and I'm ending with it. At the commission, we're not just focused on students getting 2- and 4-year degrees. We're pretty agnostic about what that credential is, but most of the data would suggest that the pendulum's continuing to swing in the direction of a high school diploma not being enough. Some sort of credential, whether it be an industry recognized certification or certificate, that's where all the high demand, high wage, high growth jobs are happening. We see Indiana's got a lot of work to do. All the economic experts and folks at the Lumina Foundation elsewhere say that at a minimum, Indiana needs 60% of our adult population to have some form of education and training beyond high school by the year 2025. We're currently sitting at about 41%, and that's including those with certificates, not just 2-year and 4-year degrees. That number is continuing to inch up, but incrementally, and we're really trying to attack this on both fronts. If all of our students who were going on to college now today graduated with some sort of credential, obviously this would be a different picture, but we also have a significant number of adults, majority actually, that don't have some sort of credential beyond high school. So we're really trying to attack this on both fronts. Last week, the governor did a statewide rollout of under his umbrella of the next level jobs, and as part of that, there's a new state financial aid opportunity that will provide a certificate of 1 year or less in high demand areas, those demand areas being advanced manufacturing, building construction, health and life sciences, transportation, logistics, and one which I'm forgetting that I'll remember in a moment. There are 5 of them. I'll take my word for it. The idea being that we have a significant part of our incumbent workforce that simply doesn't have the training and skills they need to have a better quality of life for them and their families. And we're seeing that same issue for our students on the K-12 end that, at one point in time, a high school diploma was enough. Maybe not as long ago as we might hope, even less than a high school diploma was enough, but increasingly the pendulum is swinging towards a high school diploma is the absolute minimum just to get your foot in the door, but most employers are going to expect you to earn some sort of training or higher quality skills over the long term, and certainly more and more higher levels of learning at all levels. I know I talked very fast, but if there are questions Mr. Chairman or others have, I'd be happy to try to answer them if time allows.
Anybody have any questions, comments?
Jason, thanks for these statistics, very, very helpful. I want to go back to the remediation. You're saying 56% of students generally need remediation in math. And of course, there's an assessment that makes that determination. And so my question is, what's the valid and reliable instrument that's used to determine whether or not a student needs remediation?
Yeah, and by state policy, the vast majority of remediation delivery at the post-secondary level takes place at the community college, and they use multiple measures. One is the AccuPlacer assessment. They also look at PSAT and SAT scores. They also look at GPA. So I know that whenever possible, they try to sort of take a more holistic look, but those are the 3 main areas that they look at.
Thank you.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
I think so.
Okay. So I want to point to Jason's website as well that is really slick, if you haven't seen it, that shows a lot of this data as interactive and really gives much more dense data than is demonstrated on one pager. So I would direct everyone there if you haven't been there.
I appreciate that plug, and for giving me sole credit for it, even though obviously it's a team effort. I'll say we have these static reports. I see the superintendent has one too that, as Amy said, go into much greater depth on all this, breaking down not only by diploma type, by race, ethnicity, income level, et cetera. And in addition to the static reports, as Amy said, we have this sort of dynamic dashboard that you can kind of run your own custom queries. As I said, it's hard to get all this data on one page, but trying to kind of hit the high points, knowing full well that we could go into much greater depth than any one of these. Thank you.
So I do have a question in addition to pointing people to Jason's website. One of the gentlemen from Frankfurt who provided some public comment this morning indicated that the local businesses are looking for a high school diploma. What data, Jason, you mentioned that it's beyond a high school diploma. So his experience and your data don't seem to match up. Although another of the gentlemen, and I'm sorry I didn't write these down as they were speaking, but another of the gentlemen indicated the ability of individuals to get an entry-level job, and success is the ability to move up in and through that job. So I wonder if there is any meshing of data from DWD where we look at kind of long-term longitudinal employment opportunities with the indication of those graduation outcomes, a certificate or something beyond high school, so that we have evidence around opportunities that exist in employment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'll make just a couple comments, and I can tell my colleague from the Chamber of Commerce wanted to add on as well, so I'll turn it over to Carol. The short answer is yes. our state data system, which has changed names a few times. I think it's not called Inc. anymore, it's called something else. Increasingly, we're trying to have a better understanding of what happens to our students who go directly into the workforce. I'll tell you that the message from employers is a little more nuanced than sometimes we talk about, particularly in a time where we're talking about 3% unemployment. So I think across the board, employers are fairly desperate for workers. Whenever possible, though, they would like those workers to be more highly skilled, more highly trained. But given the competition for workers, when a job's pretty much there for anybody who wants it, I think that many employers are having to make some concessions in terms of the type of worker that they'll accept.
Well, Jason, you have an awesome website, and you stole everything that I was going to say. But, and I'm happy to share with the group, we just recently finalized our 10th consecutive employer survey, and that we're asking some of these questions. And I think what Jason is saying is exactly right, and somebody actually just texted me this question, you know, do employers really, do they really not want anything besides a high school diploma? And I think I think the answer is yes and no. I think that yes, right now they are so desperate for workers that they will take anybody with a high school diploma right now and train them internally because they are that desperate for workers. But that being said, they would prefer that they come, according to our results that we have from our survey, that they would prefer that they have more than just that, so that they don't have to train them and spend the capital they can spend on hiring more, you know, buying more machinery or whatever it is that they want to do with that capital, and to invest more in their company if they didn't have to. But right now they're so desperate because of the 3% unemployment. In some areas it's in the 1 percentage point. So I don't know if that answers your question, Amy, but I'd love DWD to pipe in too as well.
I think there's some data that is going to be shared for the next meeting. I do know that through CTE, the DWD tries to track employment of students and can share some of that information, so we can try and collect some of that for the next meeting. It's an imperfect science, as everyone knows.
There's also a report we might want to look at that's related. It's on the DOE's website. It's the 2016 College Career Readiness Report that has some of that information. I think that's what you might be referencing.
I do want to share, I think it's interesting, if you look back, I went as far back as I could for the college readiness reports, and my concern is, which I think is the importance of the work here on the panel, it's very flatlined. So you're not seeing a lot of movement except for that remedial part, that we got an explanation for that 17% increase or decrease in needing remediation. So I think it's important to note that, you know, I went back to 2011, which is as far back that I had time to go back for and that I can locate in the moment, but just to look at it to see where are we going and what's happening, and it is a very flat line. Hence, the reason why we've been down the road of needing a GQE, it has to be one exam, you know, we're pushing credentialing, but we're not getting any movement. So the importance of this panel, I think, is emphasized if you go back and look at that trend data exactly as Jason and his team and DWD has put together to really bring it all together. I think when we look at it in pillars, it's very dangerous because it's a bigger picture. So I commend the work with the commission, commend the work of DWD, and bringing that together is going to be critical in helping us make some really important decisions.
Can I add an experiential comment? I don't have any hard data, but looking at it from my standpoint, I'm in my second year of a 3-hour precision machining or machine tool technology class, and in my class, we don't have any certifications that we do. I've talked to my teacher about it multiple times because I have taken an advanced manufacturing course where I earned a certified logistics associate certification, and I haven't really been able to put that to use, but it's more because I'm not 18. In my precision machining class, there's a NIM certification that we could get, but employers, that's not really what they're looking for. And how you have to look at it, it's more the career cluster, it's more the industry, the employer, it all depends, it's all circumstantial, because in my career field, they don't really care whether or not we have the certification, because depending on what company we're going to go to, if we're going to do plastic injection molding, if we're going to be doing racing, that sort of machining, it's all going to be different. So they're going to have to train you very specifically. But in like health sciences or in the automotive industry, there are certifications that employers do want to see because it sets a standard. But it depends more on the career cluster and the industry that you are going into. So I think it's more beneficial to look at it from what career cluster it is and what industry it is.
I think that's a really good point that Rosalind makes. And one of the areas that we think that we could strengthen these reports moving forward is being able to reflect, and I don't know if this is still the accurate terminology, but the CTE concentrator students, because there's clearly a big difference between students who finish a coherent sequence of career-related courses, like what I believe Rosalind is referencing, whether or not it included a certification at the end or not, versus students who just sort of randomly take a CTE course from this area and a CTE course from that area. I think this sort of what Rosalind described is a student leaving with a really clear core competency in an area that, whether or not it has a certification attached to it, which is of course the ideal, but whether it does or doesn't, that's going to be a skill set that an employer is going to recognize and an employer is going to value and likely is going to hire someone like Rosalind. I'm sure there's probably people in the room who want to hire Rosalind right now.
I wanted to follow up with that too. Again, as always, a student says most articulately what we all need to hear, so thank you. I can't wait to hear from more students. This morning, I think I heard the word flexibility about, 7 or 8 times. And what our student had to share reminded me on the topic specifically of certifications, that's another area where I think we have to be very nimble, very flexible. I know that in Noblesville, when we worked with certain industry, we were very clearly hearing from automotive, for example, that they wanted to hire students who had some knowledge of the automotive area, but they were, and I think I spoke to this last time we met, just about every automotive service, every automotive industry has their own training program, whether that be Chevrolet or Toyota, whatever that looks like. And Ellen, I'd be interested, because I know you have a very good relationship with the automotive industry down in your area. And if they shared a similar message, did they or not?
It's similar.
Similar.
I would say similar.
Yeah.
They do value the certification.
Right. So again, just calling for that flexibility, because it's kind of different. It can be different region to region. And then also you were talking about the precision machining, and we had similar feedback in that area coming from some of our biggest manufacturers who said they didn't really care about certification. So I just want to send out that reminder, I guess, very carefully before we jump on a bandwagon that is one size for all, even with the certifications and where they are a definite possibility in some areas. And again, I think it just depends on the relationship that you have with different industry, can be highly valued or not.
So this is really interesting. So do we do a better job, Jason? I guess I don't know who I'm looking at on this one. How do we do a better job then of making sure that we have either the pathway, actually I'm going back to my old CTE days and talking pathways, and I shouldn't be using those terminology. But what Rosalind said was so very important to this. We just want to know that she's got the skills when she leaves school, right? But how is there a way for us to do a better job of having the certifications that are needed? Because I think a lot of time, at least what I'm hearing in the paradox of this is, yes, employers don't necessarily want certifications, but that's nuanced because of the unemployment or the needing employees, sorry. So how do we do a better job of knowing what that employer actually needs? Does that make sense? Or is that what we're saying? Because we also know that we don't want the disparity between if Rosalind School's doing a great job of getting her ready even without a certification, we also know there might be other areas that aren't, right? So how do we have that consistency to know that we're getting that? Does that make sense as a discussion item here?
I actually think Alan's a really good person to speak to this because I think part of the magic in that formula is that the schools have to be in close communication with their surrounding industry to give them a voice in what is valued, and I'm talking about the industry now. And Alan, probably you should talk about some of your work.
Well, there are so many certifications, so many, and that's a huge challenge to identify the most appropriate certifications, and obviously that's going to take communication with all the industry sectors to have them help define which are the most appropriate certifications. And it really has to be driven by the employers, not the other way around. We can't create it and say, look at this certification, will it fit you? They have to tell us, and then we have to, then we can embrace that. But there are several certifications. I would say that I'm going to agree with the young lady that we try to pursue NIM certification with our students, but I'm not sure how valuable that is in our community if our employers really value the NIM certification. So, and that's one I think across the state. It's just one example. But then we could look at some of the computer certifications that are very, very valuable and recognized by all. So I don't really have an answer other than that's one of our challenges when we talk certifications, or identifying the appropriate certification with that's going to be valued and going to make a difference in hiring and promotion amongst those that have those certifications.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question of Alan?
Sure.
Alan, I see where the certifications are completely different. How expensive? What's the range of expense on those? Because while the certifications may not be extremely valued, which I would find shocking, I think the ability to obtain a certification is what would impress that employer. So I think anytime we talked last week about being stackable, I think anytime that a student proves, just as you have, that you're building a case, these are the skills that I have. I can obtain these skills very quickly. I can't imagine that's not appealing to any employer.
Right.
So if there's not a huge expense to the student or to the family, I would think the more of those things that you can stack together, I don't know any corporation in the country that wouldn't, while they may not be the only thing that they are, or the end all, I would think that they would have to recognize who that student is and what the potential is in their company.
Right, and that's and for us, that's BJ. That's why we pursue every certification we can, and across the state, so the students can place those on their resume, and obviously it tells again the character of who that student is. But outside, my point was being just outside of that, I'm not certain that some of our employers really even, if you ask them some of the certifications that we're pursuing, if they really know the standards within those certifications. They value them, but I want to go back to what Jason said. There's such a need for employees right now. They're not quite as meaningful as if there were not such, we weren't in the state we're in right now as far as employment. The costs are wide range. Some of the costs are atrocious for some of the certifications, and they're very expensive, while others are, again, very, at the secondary level, very, I guess I would say the cost being appropriate, but some within the secondary world are almost unreasonable to say that we have a large percentage of our students pursue some types of certifications because of the cost. So I think that was part of your question, wasn't it? Just some are just out of the reach of some of our students, unless there was some kind of supplement or funding to support that.
I think a lot of it is about whether or not it's a requirement or a recommendation. Because if it's a recommendation, then it's more flexible for going back to flexibility, whether or not they do provide the certification. And going back to what Dr. Butt said during the public comment about having local control, I think that's really important, because if it's a recommendation, then that district can choose how to spend its money, because one of the reasons why we don't have that certification in my class is because it is very expensive and not very pertinent to future employers. So making it so with the pathways, it's more of a recommendation but not the requirement. That way, whether you live in a farm community, whether you live in an urban environment, like wherever you live, that district can decide what's more important to them, what's going to make their students successful, because the point of all of this is to make sure that we have an educated and talented workforce that's job ready, college or post-secondary ready, that they're able to succeed. And so if we're giving them those opportunities, if we're giving the districts the opportunities to give the kids the opportunities, but not holding them back, they're able to do what's more applicable for their students and help them, because their district knows their students best. You can't take and put one label on the entire state, because everybody's different, every student's different, every pathway's different. So creating more of like the recommendation, I think, would be better, because you don't know where they're going to go after high school, whether it's straight into a job or into college, if they have those skills. Because like in my industry, it's like I know how to operate mills and lathes, and if I can go in and show my employer that, they're like, wow, you know what you're doing, we can put you on this and train you on like this sort of machine, and you can advance with the skills that you have, even if you don't have the certification. But so, I don't want to hold back, like the certification is important to some industries, it just depends, but that's what I'm getting at with it shouldn't be required, it should be more flexible with the districts.
Certification issue is one size fits all. And I would agree with the wisdom of the student that one size fits all does not make any kind of sense. So whether you call it flexibility or balance, it's a key issue. But I do want to return back to what someone said during public comment, and that's our friend from the crossing. He talked about soft skills. And I think soft skills cut across all certification. And from a public policy state perspective, I think I'd like to get some input on the soft skills. And I define soft skills as showing up on time, being a person that is a good employee, good work ethic, interpersonal skills. So those soft skills that no matter what certificate you're talking about, it's really important, I think, for all students to have those skills. So I'd like to shift, if it's okay, for at least 2 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, to get people's input. Do you think soft skills cut across, and I see some hands going up, some yeses, do you think soft skills cut across all those areas that from a state policy perspective, maybe that's the direction we need to be going in?
So yeah, in my school we have an advisory class, and that's where we touch on those soft skills. It's more of a professionalism type of class. It teaches how to write a resume, cover letter, how to be professional, handshake, eye contact, and all of those things. And although you can do that outside of the classroom, I feel like that should be implemented in all schools in Indiana. Like, although you guys said that we don't all fall into the same category, we still have to be professional when we go into the workforce. So having all of those, having a class or some kind of time in school for the students to know how to be professional in the workforce is really essential. And yeah, I agree with that.
I think all employers are looking for soft skills. They all want their employees to show up on time and to have good communication skills and to be able to work as a team and to work independently. And we as a state actually have a work ethics certificate that is run through the Department of Workforce Development. It's been piloted in a couple of schools, but probably the most successful program is in Clark County. And we've now expanded it to, Beth, is it 19 school districts? We've created a template. The State Workforce Innovation Council has a work ethics certificate task force that has developed a template based on the programs that are working, and there's state dollars that have been spent that are available to school districts. And so I think the plan is for that to be rolled out on more. We want to do it slowly, but the key part, and of course my opinion, is that we get employer input at the local school district level to say, I know originally we talked about, I think we had like 92% attendance rate the students had to maintain, and the employer said, time out. We have an employee only showing up 92% of the time, they're out of a job. So they got the employer feedback to say, okay, we need to increase that. And the results have been amazing. I know in Clark County where it's been very successful. I mean, their I can't remember the word that I'm trying to think of, but basically their discipline referral rates have gone down tremendously once they started implementing this program. So, and you know, we're hearing testimonials from students saying, I can't skip class today, and I'm really on track to get that work ethic certificate. So, so I think we do have some of that, and we could potentially talk of that perhaps being part of a pathway, potentially moving forward.
So the ARC of Indiana, we run a training institute and teaching hotel in Muncie. And so we've been going for about a year and a half, and I think one of the things we grossly underestimated was those soft skills. People with disabilities do very well in the soft skills, and so when our graduates leave the Erskine Green Training Institute and going into their jobs, they have not only the qualifications and even some certifications, but they also have those soft skills that the employers really want. So much so that now we have employers coming to us to say, can you teach our employees those soft skills even if they don't come through your program? Because the soft skills really are showing up to work, having that very strong work ethic that I think a lot of employers are wanting, and I think they're very desperate for.
I think soft skills speak even beyond students who are entering the workforce right after graduation. You need those. Everyone's going to eventually, hopefully, enter the workforce, whether they go directly from high school graduation or after their post-secondary education. So I think it's something that benefits students across the board. College professors don't want to and don't have time to teach soft skills in their classes, so kids need that even before they get to college.
Can I say something? Sorry. That's exactly what I was thinking, because I wrote an inquiry paper on life readiness skills and how high schools have not necessarily lacked them, but how I feel considered myself that I'm not ready for college on maybe a life readiness page, but on maybe an academic page, because I can do all the classes, I can do the classwork, I can pass the test, but what if I don't know how to like apply for college, how to get the scholarships, and how to like maybe do an internship for college. So I just feel like high schools should maybe start to consider that and to start pushing kids so that they don't feel as intimidated by their senior year. Because my school, we do kind of college prep a little, but it's not as much as I wish it kind of was, because by senior year, it kind of just hits you like a ton of bricks. And you're just kind of not ready, and you got to hit deadlines, and you got to keep up the scores, and you got to keep up the grades for college. And so it's just kind of a lot at the one time. So it'd be really helpful if like the high schools kind of push a more life readiness and like either pass college or to get to college and to get accepted to college kind of thing in school. So that's it.
If I could kind of go off of what we've been talking about as far as soft skills versus certifications. At my high school in Batesville, Indiana, we had an advanced manufacturing co-op program where we would spend the mornings Monday through Friday at our high school, but in the afternoons we would leave and we would go off campus half the week to Ivy Tech and the other half to 4 local businesses. And one of the main points that we try to teach the kids that are in the program now, as I'm now graduated out of it, is you kind of treat it as a job interview, because anyone can study a book or they can go to class and they can do their homework and it shows that they're smart. But what the businesses in my community, such as Hill-Rom, Batesville Casket Company, Batesville Tool and Die, which are all global companies, what they really want to take away from these students is who's going to show up on time, who can get a hold of HR as a 16-year-old high school student and say, hi, my name is Caleb Pearson. I'll be coming on Wednesdays and Fridays. They don't want the school getting a hold of them saying, hey, we're going to send such and such student here. They want to see that kid take the initiative and show the maturity that while I may only be in high school, I am mature, I can get a hold of you, I can be there on time, I can work hard when I'm there. I can show you what I've learned, which is when the education is important, because they do want to see that you have knowledge, but you first have to show them that you're willing to show up and work, show that you're mature enough to contact them, that you're not a teenager anymore, you're transitioning to the workforce as a young adult rather than as a teenager. And that's one of the big things that our program teaches, is they tell you what business, excuse me, they tell you what business you're responsible to go to and when you're expected to be there, and then the rest is on you. They let you take care of that to show the employer that, hey, I'll be graduated in 6 months, a year, whatever it may be, and I'm ready to work. I have what it takes to show up to work, and I can be a good fit to your company with the knowledge that I've learned from high school.
I wanted to add a comment. As we talk about a work ethics certificate, I see it again as one of those great equalizers. I'm going to talk briefly about internship program, and one of the lessons we learned at Noblesville was that your 4.5 students don't always make the greatest interns. And the reason I want to bring up the work ethics certificate is that at some point in my final year as an assistant principal, we found one of our senior gals who was in our Pharmatech program, and she barely had a passing GPA. In fact, she was kind of one of our at-risk girls that we were keeping our eyes on, and she was in the Pharmatech program because she was emancipated, living on her own, and needed an income. And so she was in the Pharmatech program with CVS, and her grades became at such a risk that we had to go talk to CVS about possibly pulling her so that we could focus a little more on academics. And I love to share this story because the pharmacist at CVS was devastated. He was like, she has been such an amazing intern. And what he proceeded to talk about were all of her soft skills and how she was great with customers, and she remembered them, and she engaged in conversation, and she showed up every day, and she had a great work ethic. And it was some of the things that we didn't get to see in an academic setting. And I just wanted to share that little story to put the work ethics certificate and all that that means and represents out on the table as, again, a possibility. And as we're talking about flexibility and the things that matter, and to remember that intelligence comes in many different packages and it's not all academics.
Just to add something really quick, Kayla brought up a really good point, and I feel like we got a little bit of pushback on the work-based learning experience or internship experience, but sometimes some of those soft skills you learn on the job as well. And so I think that's a great opportunity for students to have some sort of work-based learning experience before they graduate. And also in that, I know for me, the internship that I had in college opened my eyes to what I want to do. And sometimes these internships, especially in the high school area, open their eyes to what they don't want to do, which is really, really important as well. So.
And I just wanted to add, sort of following up on that point, that I think one of the challenges, I think we can all agree that the soft skills and the work ethic things are all extremely important, but what's just as much a challenge is back to this conversation of the pathway, where did the student get them? And some students are likely to get them in a clear, linear progression of academic coursework in high school. Some of them are likely to pick them up not there, but in the internship. Some of them are going to pick them up in work with an outside organization, a nonprofit, clubs, extracurricular sports. And so I think the challenge is we can agree students need to develop these skills. And some of it is, frankly, knowledge about themselves, but it's not always obvious which set of experience or pathways are the right ones for a student to get them, which sort of puts us in the conundrum of how do you chart a pathway that requires some combination of the student and the school and or the school corporation decide what are the available options, and then how do we actually evaluate and determine, because you don't want to send students into the world saying, well, we had stuff out there, hopefully they got it. They need to have them, but at the same time you also want to value the variety of ways that students get them. So I think there's an inherent challenge there around we can say, and you know, limitations or challenges that communities face. You can't say everyone has to do an internship to get this because that's not feasible everywhere. But I think we have to be open to considering what are the things that you can use to knit it together, and then who's the decider around, do we have a portfolio that ensures every student has the opportunity and then is actually taking advantage of it during their time in school, so that when they exit, because I think the point is they're all going to be employees someday, some sooner than others, but ideally all of them for their lifetime, and building this foundation of these skills early sets them all up for success, whether they're going into military service or career initially or to college. All of this stuff is helpful.
Yes.
To that point, I think that gets truly to the heart of what this panel needs to look at, is when we have all of these different situations, we're going to have to trust on a local level at some point that they're going to do what's best for those students. So I think that as a panel, we need to say, this is the bar. This is where we want you to be. And how you get there is as individualized as the certificates that you're going to pick up, whether it's an extracurricular certificate. I'm a sports guy, so I think that those things are always built in there. Some guys, some people aren't. So we can say, we want you to have this. You have options A, B, C, D, and E to get it, but you have to use one of those options. We don't care which ones you pick. And then on a local level, if you have one that you think is not included that should be, bring that to us. Let us approve it. So I don't want to see us try to focus in so much on as to how we get there as to where we want them to get. I think that needs to be done completely independently, local control, and let those local folks who know those kiddos better than anybody sitting around this table, let them decide what the best way to ensure that they're receiving those soft skills is.
And BJ, that makes us, I've got a couple of messages from folks that would like to take a quick break. That gives us a perfect transition to our next part. And Jason, I would just back up and say thank you for that. And putting something on one page is like awesome. So I commend you on that and appreciate that. Let's take about 10 minutes just as a quick break here for biological break, or get another water or whatever you need, and then we'll be right back with the rest of the discussion.
Hey Jason, is this, email me your website? It's not, I'll write on there. It's impressive you got all those.
This is not a
Great comments. And I read your bio before coming here today, and now you're going to be here now. Okay. Yeah. With my card, I work for Access. So everything that you're saying straight from your side card and my email. So that would be
I know I want to do sometimes.
I saw it, so really look at it.
Well, if that is something that is to you, would like to do, reach out to me, and just clarification-wise, to meet with someone who is aeronautical engineering
Actually, well, you have the exact same name as my cousin. Oh, really? Yeah, I was like, why did you sound so familiar?
Now you're coming about
I rely on life readiness, and the fact that we don't really have life readiness classes, and how you kind of have to choose if you want to take a class that will prepare you more or something like that, or a higher like weighted class which will boost up your GPA and make you look more pleasing to college. And how you kind of have to pick between the two, and how I'm lucky enough that like both of my parents have gone to college, so like they can help me through it. But even since then, it's changed tremendously. So like they've been able to help me, and like my brother, he's at Purdue right now, so like we bounce it with him. So he's kind of like the guinea pig of it. So I'm actually in the middle of my Common App board right now. So I have most of the colleges I'm applying for both of the colleges. So great. But even with that, I was really confused on how to apply for the Common App and how to connect it with my high school. And so I'm lucky enough that we have great counselors, and we have a person who like a college prep kind of person who just graduated scholarships for every college. And I'll stay on my mom state, and she's like kind of the person between you and a counselor, so I can like figure out. But I met with her last week, and she was everything.
Family somewhere?
I just know my name. Yes, I'm like, I have to have it in my list. And even she told me, she was like, oh, you're fine, like, you have it all organized and figured out. So it was really nice to have
Any
it.
special senior events or rites of passage coming up?
So, I mean, like, I love my waiting classes. Like, I went to a church school and I met this soft. I've learned kind of those skills, but at the same time, I haven't really. I just started to learn that, so all the rest of it's good. I feel like it's kind of hard though, too, because
So you have a large family and a dog, is that what that is?
Yeah, like my aunt's classes, they can have children.
Where are your
I have
sisters
no
now?
so like fit and older sisters working at this. Yeah, like I understand that when people do want to make decisions, but like I would be in this situation. They can when it's like a major decision, yes.
There's a fear that you don't make the wrong decision.
Yeah, and they're like, well, if I make this decision, I can go down this path, but if that fails, then I'll have to take all the fall with that. It's just really, I think that you have to do it on the fall. That's really what I want to do. Right now, I have 6. So I have 2 states of school, so I have Ball State school, and then I have IU. I would like to go to IU for their engineering programs. I want to do their third year by the time I get there. So I mean, like, there's nothing wrong with that. The program has to start somewhere. But if I have the option to go to so those are my other 2.
Discussion makes sense?
Yeah. I'm looking into Notre Dame as well.
Tell me what's about it.
Ohio State. I didn't really get the worst part, but like the second part was like they're really big. I just feel like engineering and everything. So
Yes, my mom.
I'm looking at, instead of just ECA tests, there's and by law, it has to be active for state, so the internship pathway is in higher
Make sure that when you go grad school and hopefully we have to get so,
I just gotta make it to know how to one, and then I'm okay. A lot of scholarships that they turn down to like so I'm trying to get my son. I was like, I don't know, not doing much. Like, I'm not standard, but at the same time, right. get that for certain. So it's kind of like really had to go out and to make sure that they're not just yeah, that's what it's missing. But so like this really small big ones that kind of additional that they didn't know was so
And that's just, yeah, that's another problem, whether it's a lot of things, I really understand.
I know I'm interrupting great conversations going on, but if I could call the panel back to order, I would appreciate it, please. All right. You know, it's interesting. I'm usually not a break person, but it's interesting the conversations that were going on. And students, let me tell you, you were the buzz as conversations were going on how great your input's been and all that. So I give you that little kudos at this point. And so today, we do have students, parents, and advocates here, and so would like to address the groups, and have kind of got this split up into just some key things to start some discussion, not to necessarily guide the discussion in any particular way. But your homework was to think about how do we establish graduation pathways that allow every student to find success after school, high school, and whether that's college or whether that's career. So hopefully you've given that some thought. And so would like to start with the students with just a couple of questions to begin some discussion. Is one, and a couple of you have already done this, but tell us a little bit about your high school experience, your school experience, and then maybe give us some activity, and you've already done this a little bit already, but give us some activities that you believe, or courses, things that you've done that have prepared you, you believe, as you're going out, and things that you still feel, and again, some of these things you've talked about already, but things that you believe you'd like to see. What would these pathways look like for you? Okay, does that make sense? So we'd like to hear, and anyone can chime in, ask some questions, discussions, what have you. But right now, let's focus on the students and take their guidance, in terms of what you've done that's helped you understand what your options are after high school, things that you believe have got you prepared.
Okay. I'm not a public speaker by any means, so pardon me when I try to spit this out, but I've always made the joke that, not really a joke, but I've always been academically prepared, okay? So I'm the AP Calculus student, ready for this AP exam, but sometimes I struggle to open the child-proof bags of chips you buy from the convenience store. It's that issue that I believe our schools are preparing us academically, but we're lacking in that soft skill area. And I've taken all these AP classes. I'm a 4-year Spanish member. I've done international club, and I've really enjoyed my academic career, but I've had to strive outside of school to learn these soft skills. 2 years ago, I didn't know how to read a tape measure. I knew how to solve a calculus problem. So during the summer, I got a job on a construction crew, and I've really learned a lot in terms of skills that are going to prepare me for the workforce through this. And that's why I really press internships. I mean, I think they're a great thing. They can be difficult to set up, and flexibility is a big issue with them, but I think the best way to teach these students these skills are through internships and giving them that ability to get out into the workforce during their high school career. Thank you.
Thank you. Is high school the time, or should we start 7th and 8th grade with some of this exposure so you can start to develop what career cluster or where you go?
I think it's a great time in any of the grades to get students thinking about their pathway. That is something we really stress at Perry Central early in the grades, is finding a pathway and taking a class, just getting yourself exposed to it. But I feel internships, as they are at our school, should be more reserved for seniors, because obviously there are going to be those issues where you get these 7th and 8th grade students who want to be a doctor one day and a police officer the next. So I feel that it's great to offer students in these lower grades these classes. So whether it be like construction classes or ag classes, offer them these opportunities to get their foot in the door, but reserve internships more for senior students and along that line.
If I could kind of answer your question about how we should get younger kids ready, and also the question of what my school experience was like, I'll start with the younger students. In the town of Batesville, this summer was the 2nd year for the program. We've started developing summer camps for 7th and 8th grade boys and girls, not just for Batesville students, any of the surrounding counties. We have a manufacturing, a technology, and a healthcare camp for them to attend for 1 week out of the summer. It is free to the families, and what the camps do is they take. Last year we had 45 students for the manufacturing camp, 7th and 8th grade, boys and girls, and we let them go to a business or a business setting, similar to what that camp represents. So for the manufacturing one, I was actually one of the leaders for the groups the day that we came to Heartwood Manufacturing. So we give the kids the opportunity to go to one of these 3 camps if they want, free of charge, 4 hours a day, for a week. And when they're at these camps, we understand they're on summer break, so most of them didn't want to come to a summer camp in the first place. So we kind of try to make it fun, and we introduce the kids to what you will do in these settings. For the manufacturing one, I work at Heartwood Manufacturing, which is a woodworking facility, and we showed them the process of what it was to design and manufacture a birdhouse in a manufacturing setting. So we showed them, very generically on a computer what it takes if you want to do something more computer-oriented in manufacturing to design the birdhouse. And then we took them through each part of our shop, showing them the different steps that it takes to get from an idea on a computer to a finished product that they got to bring home. So the students for the manufacturing program, they thought it was cool to go in and use these machines and use, a drill and build a birdhouse. But at the end of it, they also realized, hey, this was really cool. Like, I would like to maybe do something like this someday, design stuff, build stuff. And then we also have one for the technology and healthcare. For the technology, they go to Hillenbrand's Incorporated, and they go down to where they have all their security, and they can see what it takes to keep all that up and running. And then for the healthcare, they also get to go to a hospital. They get to go back, see how an x-ray machine works, see how, all that kind of stuff works. So we open their eyes as 7th and 8th graders so that we can better prepare them for the growing possibilities or growing opportunities that we have at our high school, which is kind of my next point. As I said earlier, I only went to high school from 8 a.m. to lunchtime every day, Monday through Friday, my entire junior and senior year. The rest of the day I would go to Ivy Tech, where I was able to graduate with, I think, close to 30 credit hours as a senior. And then also the other half of the week, we would go to Hill-Rom, Batesville Casket, Batesville Tool and Die, and Hartwood Manufacturing, where we would work directly one-on-one with different people throughout the companies, and we would represent and show them our soft skills, the knowledge that we were getting from the Ivy Tech classes, as well as what we were learning from the high school, which we set ours up to where we have a connection between the high school, the businesses, and our local Ivy Tech, because it takes more than just the high school or more than just a business to set this all up. I know we have monthly meetings between those three establishments to keep this up and running, and we're now creating one for the healthcare with the hospitals in our town. We're creating one with the technology field. We're creating one with automotive. So we're starting to branch this out into different areas that it's not just manufacturing. And because of this program, kids are graduating with 30 credit hours. I graduated in May of 2016, and I currently started my final semester to get my associate's degree at Ivy Tech last night. So I'll be not even 20 years old yet. I'll have an associate's degree, as well as I've been working since the day I graduated at Hartwood Manufacturing in the office as a designer, basically as a mechanical engineer, because I already had almost an entire associate's degree. Plus, I had 2 years of work experience at these businesses. They saw that I showed up. They saw that I worked hard. They saw that I could interact and work as a team. And we've had 14 students go through the manufacturing program. 10 of them are all employed at one of the 4 businesses or in a business similar to what we were taught at Ivy Tech. So they're all in manufacturing facilities. 2 of them went off to do something a little bit different than manufacturing. And the other 2, I'm not actually sure. So of those 14, we've had 12 of them that went straight into workforce while still going to Ivy Tech to earn their degrees. I know it's a special situation that we have all these resources in Batesville, but it's something that we've been trying to teach to other schools, that we don't have to make every kid take the SAT, the ACT, all those standardized tests. That it's also just as important to give every kid the opportunity to go out in the workforce, start college earlier, to graduate so that they're ready to do exactly what they want to do, because not every student is ready or wants to go to a 4-year college right after high school.
I just have a follow-up question for Caleb. How did you know, with your parents and the school and yourself, to get into that career pathway, into the Ivy Tech partnership?
That's a good question. So this is the 6th year for the manufacturing pathway. The advanced manufacturing pathway was the first of the, I think now 4 that we have. So going into my freshman year, our school does a really good job of, when you're scheduling classes, kind of planning ahead for what you think you may want to do after high school, so that you don't get stuck in 4 years of baking class only to go on to do construction, because that wouldn't have been worth your time. So, I let them know that I was interested in going into engineering or design, something along those lines. And they let us know, very detailed, that they had a program in the works, what it was, let us know when meetings were for it, gave us their personal information, and kind of kept in contact with us that this would be a possibility, so that when I went to schedule for my sophomore year, I knew that I wanted to try that program, because you can do it for a semester, and if you don't want to continue, It's really easy to get out of it. You're still on track to graduate with your degree. So you're at no lost time because all of this happens during your normal 8 to 3 school day. It's just something, plus that you can do to your regular school day. So our school, they have a lot of meetings and they do a lot to make sure that people are very aware of all the programs that are out there. But they also set them up to where if you try them out and you don't like them, you can get right out of it and you're still right on track and you're no farther behind than anyone sitting next to you in your classes.
So just like Caleb, I would also be graduating with an associate's degree once I finish high school. But my high school experience has been different. So I guess we could start from like the beginning, not of high school, but when I was born. I was born and raised in Lima, Peru, which is the country in South America. I moved to the United States when I was 10 years old, and I didn't know how to speak English or really how the U.S. looked like. And then at that point, I went to a public school, Wayne Township. I started to learn English, catch up on stuff, learn new things, and by the time I was in middle school, I wasn't really focused on school. I kind of just played around a little bit and didn't really want to do my best. I knew I could do better, but I just was focused on other stuff. And then, let's see, my freshman year was when it all kind of started. I was like, wow, I actually have to do good in school to actually go to a good college and have a good career. Freshman year for Wayne Township people, we go to the freshman center at Ben Davis High School, and then you have the option of moving to Ben Davis High School, Area 31, or Ben Davis University High School, which I attend. And Ben Davis University High School gives you an associate's degree. So when I started, I just said, okay, I think I'm interested in business. I really like business. So I decided to get the concentration in business. They offer business, health, IT, and liberal arts. So I started off my sophomore year, and I really set good goals for myself. I have accomplished straight A's from that point on until now. I hope I continue to do so. And during that time, the experience that I got was very valuable. My teachers were awesome. They still are awesome. And I joined Business Professionals of America, which is a CTSO, Career Student Technical Organization, something like that. Career Student-Led Organization. So it's just like for students, and DEC is also part of it, HOSA, all of those organizations, and that pretty much helped me with professionalism and how to act and learn more about business. And I'm also a state officer there, so it's been a great experience, and right now I'm preparing for a fall leadership that we're going to hold. So having the option of choosing to go to Ben Davis University was awesome, because I feel like if I probably would have continued to Ben Davis High School, I maybe wouldn't have been so focused on school and getting to where I want to be. So yeah, all of those experiences, I mean, everything could have been so different. I could have stayed in Peru, I could have done something else, but right now I feel very confident and happy where I am. And it's all thanks to the ability to choose. Like you guys said, having variety and flexibility between things is really essential. Somebody who wants to play football and win the state championship can go to Ben Davis High School because that's what they want to pursue. But other people see themselves in a different environment, which would be Ben Davis University High School or some other school. So yeah, it's been a great time, and we're talking about college pathways. Technically, we're both in college, so we're kind of ready for college already. And having those programs would also be helpful for many people too, who just want to finish it all in high school, or maybe move on, but get the experience prior to it. So.
Ask a follow-up question to that. So you mentioned that in middle school, you weren't really focused like that. What could have happened different in your environment, or what could have changed that path for you in middle school?
So it's definitely like personal things, like you yourself at the end of the day decide what you're going to do, or if you're going to focus, if you're going to be successful. But like you said, of course, there's an environment factor into it. So seeing your friends not really focusing on school, or maybe thinking of doing other things and not putting their full effort into school can affect other people, especially middle school when you don't know what to do, you don't know who you are. So definitely the environment was helpful. When I went to BDU, more people were actually focused on school and they wanted to get stuff done. So I was like, okay, I can do this too. So the environment factor to it is very essential. Like all of these numbers that we have in this paper are contributed towards like an environment, because 65% of students statewide going to college could be better if we improve the environment of schools, or if we just improve the staffing of teachers. So many things can go into it. So thankfully, I was in the right position at the right time. So.
Okay, personally for me, like at the beginning of high school, I started a program called Starfish Initiative. So they gave me a mentor for 4 years, and like from freshman year to now, she's been helping me like get ready for college, like prepare, like learn how to be like act outside of school and everything. So that's been really helpful for me. Like in school, like I've been good, but I think outside it's helpful, like to have like a group. Like, we have like talks and like leadership camps to help us like learn how to I guess just like talk to people. Like I didn't know how to give a proper handshake or like eye contact, stuff like that. And it's been really helpful. Like they prepare us for college too. Like that's their goal, to get us to college.
So let me ask you another question here for students. As you look toward your future, are there things that you're worried about that you're missing? And if so, what are those?
Starting out with the last question you asked and kind of falling into that, I've been on track for an academic honors diploma to go to a 4-year school for basically as long as I can remember. When I moved to Indiana, to Wayne Township in 2nd grade, after I guess I took a test that I don't even remember, where they put me in an Excel program, and because of that, I was tracked differently than everyone else. And it was so that I was taking like higher level math, higher level English, and I never really thought anything of it. I appreciated that I was in more challenging classes because, like, personally, that was just better for me. I worked better in that environment, and it's different for everyone. But whenever I reached middle school or high school, I saw a focus more on the academics. Like, if you didn't do academics, you were dumb. You didn't have value. And I don't want to say that like people are dumb, but that's the way people treated each other. In 7th or 8th grade, I started doing woodworking with 4-H, and I did it through Area 31 Career Center. That's where we had all the wood shops and stuff. That's where I started to realize, hey, I really like working with my hands. It helped me to realize, like, I can take and design something, get from point A to point B, go through all of those steps. And I decided I wanted to take vocational or career technical education classes, CTE. I took an advanced manufacturing course, and I was also taking engineering classes just because I really liked the design aspect of the things that I was doing. And whenever I started to lean more towards the hands-on, I felt like people treated me differently. They're like, no, like even my educators, my counselors, my peers, they were like, this isn't what you should be doing. Wouldn't you rather be taking like your AP classes? And I'm still taking AP classes. I'm on track for academic and technical honors. And what I worry about is the fact that we're all talking about how great work-based learning is. This conversation is making me so excited because in my school, and no offense to anyone or the educators or anything, but I just feel undermined a lot because of the pathway I'm taking, because I don't see academics and vocational technical education as mutually exclusive. I think that you're going to develop the best soft skills not in a classroom sitting there learning from a book, but going out and making those experiences, making mistakes. And because I don't see those two as mutually exclusive, academics and technical, you're able to get those experiences. And I just feel like there's a stigma in schools, not just my school, but honestly like nationwide, especially with the No Child Left Behind Act. Whenever it started, its purpose was not to take away from vocational education and career technical education, but it's to enrich the student's experience so that they have necessary training to go into the workforce. And I don't think that we should be detracting from that. What I worry about is that as educators, as peers, we're seeing things too one-sided. If we're all saying that we want people ready for the workforce, but if they're not able to get those experiences, then how are they going to perform? how are they going to go in and show that work ethic? Because honestly, certifications, all that aside, if you can't walk into your job, if you can't show that work ethic, if you can't show up on time, if you can't show up every day, your employer is not going to want you. We're not going to have a successful manufacturing industry. We're not going to have any successful industries if we don't have that. So I think abolishing that stigma and making sure that we want those areas to match, that we want to promote the things that we're preaching, we want them to do those things on both a state and a local level. I think that's what's important. And getting pushed away, my dual credit, like, okay, I'm taking my dual credit class, and my machining class is dual credit through Vincent's University. I'm going to get like 12 dual credits or something like that. I don't actually know the exact numbers, but it's a lot. And in my other classes, like my AP classes, and even I'm taking the Project Lead the Way engineering classes, those are all weighted. And I know that weighted is just like for rank. It's just a number. It's just that. When you send your scores to a college, they look at your unweighted grade. But everyone is so focused on going to a four-year school, one of the statistics is like the GPA. You need to be able to show them your GPA. You need to be able to show them, hey, I succeeded in these classes. I took the initiative to take these harder classes, these higher level classes, but my machining class isn't weighted. Even though I'm taking a dual credit class, my teacher is a college professor. And I know that that's more of a local decision, but we have to recognize this on both a state and a local level, that if we do something like, hey, I'm not going to weight this class, it might discourage someone who's on an academic track from taking that class, even though they're like, hey, I might want to do that, I might want to learn a technical skill, I might want to go into this, because it gives you backgrounds for other things, and it gives you common sense, it gives you soft skills, it provides you that knowledge. But if we're going to separate those things, then you're not going to be able to achieve that. All these things that we're talking about, we're preaching, but we're not practicing. So that's what I worry about.
Awesome. That's a lot. Thank you. Anyone else?
I'd like to say I've been on the opposite side of Rosalind's track, because I had the same kind of thought whenever I was in middle school, and then when they would introduce those dual credit classes. They weren't weighted, so I saw them as, oh, they're seeing more of a career path, they're not going to necessarily go to college, and my course was college. And so it was really kind of discouraging when I was like younger to do those kind of classes, because they were seen as more maybe like, I don't want to say dumb because that sounds really aggressive and rude, but like that's how they were seen. They were seen as people that aren't striving to go to college. And to me that was a bad thing, because that's what the state says, go to college. And so that's what I'm like, oh, that's what I have to do. I have to graduate high school, go to a 4-year college, get my degree, and then I go work. But really, there's so many different pathways that you can take, and me, I'm not knowing this until like it's way too late to realize, and so I've kind of missed out on being able to take dual credit classes and being able to change up different career paths and just do different things, because if I had a chance to go back, I would definitely be going through the Ben Davis High School Career Center, because it's an amazing program, and it gives you the job experience that you'll need once you get past college. Because right now, when I was going through like my whole high school career, my end goal of high school was college. And even as a public speaker said, that what we're doing through high school is surviving. That's what it is. Like I survive high school and then I can go survive college and then go work. Like that's kind of like the mindset of it almost, because compared to with everything that you have to pass, all the grades you have to get, that's what you think is oh, okay, if I can make it to the end of this semester with straight A's, then I've survived that semester, and now on to the next one. And that was kind of the mindset of it until I got older and I realized, hey, I could have taken a different pathway, and I could have like been getting dual credit and then furthering my education and seeing a career that I may actually like. But instead, I did it a different way, which I'm okay with, like the way I did it. There's nothing wrong with that way. But it's just, there was, what she said, a stigma around going a different way. And the stigma is really negative. And it really shouldn't be, because there's nothing wrong with choosing a different pathway. But as middle school kids and freshmen, you see a stigma and you're like, oh, I can't do it. Like if you see a negative one, you immediately go away from it because you want to be like considered cool. You want to go do whatever your friends are doing, not really thinking past like college or past even high school. So I feel like, yeah, there's just that.
Going back off of what Sydney said, being able to implement those things earlier on is good, but if we're giving the kids these opportunities, if we're spending the money, using the resources, we need to make sure that they're going to want to do it. So if we don't expand this, if we don't show them why it's important, if we don't show them that it's okay to do it, then it's a waste, honestly, because you're going to put the money towards it, you're going to put the resources towards it, and they're going to keep going on whatever track they got put on. Even though we keep saying this is what's important, this is what's going to make them job ready, this is what's going to make them successful. So implementing those things is good, but we have to make sure that we're promoting it, that we're making it positive, because there are so many manufacturing jobs, not just, well, especially in Indiana, but across the nation. We have a skills gap that we need to fill, especially with like the baby boomers and all of them aging out, especially since it's like strenuous work, a lot of it, they can't work past like 65. So we need people coming in, like they so desperately need jobs. We need people that want to do those jobs, and we don't have anyone. And nobody wants to, because nobody even knows about it. When I walked through my sister's elementary school, it was at the beginning of the year last year, they all had signs up of what they wanted to be. And it was doctor, lawyer, veterinarian. There was nothing even remotely close to like the manufacturing industry, the health sciences. It was like doctor or nurse, but like no specialization. It's like they don't know about it. So if you expose them to it, then they'll be willing to try those different areas. It's just they don't know. So if you give them those opportunities that they're able to see, then maybe they'll want to do it. But if they don't know until middle school or high school, then it's kind of late because they're already on a pathway. So.
Can I ask a question? My question leads to, there were a couple points from last week's meeting that stuck with me. Alan had one to where we were talking about a stigma. I said we need to celebrate those students that want to go into manufacturing, just like the students that get into IU and Purdue. And then in that same voice, I said, not everyone can get into IU and Purdue. And Alan corrected me and said, not everybody wants to. So I kind of made the point that you're making right now. So I guess my question is, do you think exposure at a younger age would minimize the feelings that you feel exist now? Because I think, to the senator's point last week, my dad worked in a factory his whole life. The factory that my dad worked in is not the factory that exists now. The manufacturing jobs that existed 20 years ago are not the jobs that exist now. So if we can paint that picture for younger students, maybe that would get rid of some of that stigma and encourage them to feel like they have as many options as they do.
Yeah, I definitely think that the exposure at the younger age will help, and I have seen that. We have a robotics program throughout our high school, and we had problems with recruitment just because Ben Davis is so big and there's so many opportunities, there's so many different extracurricular paths. So we were like, hey, maybe we should let the elementary schoolers know and the middle schoolers know earlier on. So we implemented a program. We're in our 4th or 5th year now, and we have so many more kids excited about technical skills, business skills, marketing skills because of it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a robotics program, but this is just how I'm seeing through the exposure that we've given these elementary students. Going on into middle school, they're realizing what pathways they want to go on, and it's different depending on like what you want to do on a local level. And also to go off your comment about how factories are different now, that is completely true, because I know we need more skilled workers, because especially with the implementation of automation and more computer-controlled machines, especially with the CNC computer numeric control, you need someone that knows how to operate it. Yeah, there's going to be a button pusher. You aren't taking away all the jobs. You're creating more skilled jobs, but you need someone that can like program the machines. It's different than the assembly lines that we used to have. We still have those, but things are advancing, and so you do need more skilled workers. So you need to make sure that they're getting that experience before they go into the workforce, so that they have just like a basic at least, so that they know like how the logistics of a plant work, or how machines make things depending on what they are. So they just have like a basic understanding. So that exposure, I think it really does help, because they can see whether or not they like it, and they can go through it, try those experiences, get those skills, the soft skills and the technical skills, and I think that'll make them more successful in both high school and post-secondary.
Can I add something to that? Like you said, Dr. Ernest, that pretty much everybody pretty much said it, that the goal that is pictured into our mind is to go to college and then after that pursue a job. And that is not supposed to happen, I don't think, for every single person, because there's definitely people who don't want to work for somebody else. They want to create their own business, like be an entrepreneur and do that. So we should focus on that too. And like you guys mentioned, automation is a big thing now. Not even just, like, I'm afraid that automation will take over completely, especially in those manufacturing jobs that our students are focusing on and actually working hard towards and choosing that as a career in the future. And that's not only like the only place, it's everywhere, like everywhere. Even lawyers, they have websites for lawyers who can just give it to you at a better rate than an actual lawyer. Or code is being written by itself now. Like programmers are not just there. Like the jobs that were employed back in 10 years are not like the same anymore, as many of you guys know. So now like people hire, IT firms hire more focused employees that focus on a certain thing, because the code and the stuff that happens on that area is already being written by itself. Automation is just like crazy, and we have to make sure that the students know that, and that they don't focus on everything, focus all of their energy into something that might not be in the future, like present. Like, I don't know, I just feel like having that as a thing that all students know about, that all students should know about automation, is essential, because we don't want students to be like, or future citizens of Indiana to be unemployed in the future, and they can't really go back to do anything else because they don't have the skills to do it, and then they have to go to college again and spend a lot of money on that. So that's a really key thing, and also the fact that people don't have to go directly into working. They can create their own business and start even a whole new industry. So that is really what I think should happen, because if we all follow the same path, we're not all going to be successful. So there has to be some variety in that.
I have a question. It's very important that we educate the children, starting at a young age all the way through high school, on what their different pathways can and should be. But how are we educating the parents? And how are we including the parents in on this? Because the parents are the ones who have the mindset that, what the stigma is for the different pathways, and they're putting that on their children as well. How are we educating the parents?
I have a question for the students.
We're gonna follow up on that too.
What some of you are talking about is a culture shift. Face it, in the United States, the pathway to success in every state, including Indiana, has been you go to college. And that has been the way we've operated. And so what we're talking about is a culture shift to saying there is another pathway that is as valuable, maybe more valuable, to students. And we have not focused on that. And so my question is, how do we prop up this other pathway to make it equal to or better than the traditional college pathway? So, for example, I was looking at some suggestions and just want to get your input on this. For example, early on, maybe middle school, if you had some cohort groups of students, and some schools call it clubs or whatever it may be, and a lot of you talked about being with other students and peer pressure, which psychologically is a huge issue, right, at middle school level, high school level. What about cohort groups of students who may be interested in pursuing this pathway? Would that have supported you in a way that maybe the culture of the school is not there yet. What about an advocate for the pathway? Maybe an employee of the school who keeps this going, that it's an important pathway that some students could be part of. So looking at a clean slate, I'm talking to students, clean slate, you could do whatever you want to do. How do you prop up this pathway to something that is equal to college success?
That's a great idea. Kind of back to what she was saying, is you kind of do have to start with the parents, because kids look up to their parents. If parents say something's good, you're like, oh, okay, then that's good, I'm going to do it. So kind of starting with the parents, but the parents need to see it from an adult level, because maybe they don't understand it, because times have changed. I mean, before even college was a big deal, it used to be the opposite way. It used to be you go to high school and you go straight to a job. And then we had to change that stigmatism to you go to high school and then you go to college. And that was a big shift for the country whenever we did that. And so I feel like we're kind of just going through the same shift, but to be able to do that like smoothly and so that it's not so rough, if we get teachers that are involved and that are great advocates and you can tell that they love it. I know when I see a teacher and I know that they love the subject that they're teaching, they've been doing it for years, that just motivates the student more to be like, I want to be like them, I want to do what they're doing. I like everything that they say, you just absorb it like a sponge, and it's an amazing thing to see whenever you see a teacher encouraging another student. And I feel like, I know Wayne Township, we're starting to introduce more of the STEM program in lower grades so that we can be able to let the younger kids realize what else is out there besides just like the basic ones that everyone knows about, like what she said, like a doctor, a lawyer, a vet. Those are all the basic ones everyone knows, but nobody really knows what goes into engineering or what goes into like any, like, I can't think of other examples, but there are other examples out there. But it's just the fact of starting when they're young and getting a teacher in there that is motivated and will be like an inspirational leader and advocate to those kids to help them realize what they want to do and help them realize that there's other career paths besides just going to college. And I know personally in 7th grade, I had a math teacher who I absolutely loved, and you could tell that she loved teaching math. And she's encouraged me to follow more of a math-heavy curriculum. And it's changed my life. Like, math has become my favorite subject because of her. So I feel like if you just start with the teachers, and I know it's kind of hard to do sometimes because there's always new teachers coming in, but if you can just get one teacher, then it can spread to like a whole bunch of them. So.
Just to go along with Denisha said, at our school, our counselors have done a wonderful job of just having orientation nights where we invite students and parents, and we go through, their career paths and explain, the different options. And we are a rural area, and so we do push the manufacturer, and we do focus that not everyone needs a 4-year degree because the jobs aren't available. So that's one way.
Well, I guess for the parents here, I have questions as far as what do you need from the schools to be on board and know how to guide your students? And then how do we make those orientation nights and those kinds of things more accessible to you? Because I know for us, where we're located, a lot of times it's just hard, parents are working, it's hard to get them there after work to go through, spend another 2 hours after a long day at work in a very kind of another meeting, So what kinds of things do you need from educators, from schools, to support your role as parents and guiding your students?
Real quick, just to go off of what they were saying before we switch the subject, he was talking about the culture shift, and with the culture shift, I feel like that's towards the 4-year college that started in like 1944 with like the GI Bill, and over a 30-year span, whenever people were coming back from the war, we went from 1.7 million to like approximately 11 million people who were earning college degrees, and so that goes to the parents, because of that, they wanted their kids and their kids and their kids to all get those 4-year degrees. And that's why we have the stigma. So we just kind of have to open parents' eyes, have passionate teachers, have back to school night or the outreach nights, however you want to do it in your local systems. We need to have those things so that we can show them, you know, this isn't the way it has to be. There are benefits to other pathways. And one of the good things about making the academics and the technical mesh is that maybe you do want to have you want to go for a 4-year degree, but you start and you realize, wow, this really isn't for me for one reason or another. Maybe it's the course load's too much. I can't balance this with my family life, the debt, which is a whole other thing. But for one reason or another, you can't make it. What's your plan B? If you take these technical classes, if you realize the potential of them, you can get a job, you can work, you can save up some money, figure out what you actually want to do, and be successful. And showing parents that that's an option for students, I think is really important, because that's going to help abolish the stigma. It's going to help make the vocational and the academics both seem important, and make our students and our future employees and workforce successful.
If I could go back to the original question here on how we can change the general conception that you go to college for 4 years to be successful, it starts with the community. We can sit here and discuss what the state can do, but ultimately it's what each community does as a whole. In Batesville, it's almost a given that if you go to Batesville High School, you will also attend an Ivy Tech class at least one a semester, and you will probably do some off work or off school campus, training or internship, because our community is so involved with Ivy Tech and the businesses, because we're a small community of 2,000, that we know how to take advantage of these resources that we have, because the community has come together and they know that, hey, my kid goes to Batesville High School, he's probably going to go to Ivy Tech, or oh, you go to Batesville, you probably go to Ivy Tech, because we realize the advantages of no matter what your career choice is, there's still some benefits to that. And it's not just a program for, oh, I don't want to go to a 4-year school, so I'm going to do this program. My sister, she's in her senior year, she's going to school to be a surgeon, but she's already completing classes at Ivy Tech to where she will already have her freshman year of college complete, that she can then transfer most of those credits to a 4-year school in state and go on to be a surgeon. Whereas someone that wants to be an automotive mechanic that can do that with a GED can also take this program. So we're not limiting it to students that only want to go work right away, or students that don't want to go to college. Our community realizes that if you want to be, a construction worker or a surgeon, you're probably still going to go through a similar program as your peers, because Ivy Tech has all those different programs. So we've kind of just set a standard in Batesville that if you go to Batesville High School, you're probably going to go off campus to Ivy Tech. And we do this through tons and tons of community events, to where the businesses will invite parents in for the night, or the college will invite parents in for the night. And they don't do one a year, they do one a month. And that's something that I'm part of now that I'm graduated, is going to these events and speaking from my point of view, rather than having our principal stand up there and preach it. I go up there as a 19-year-old student who is soon to be graduated and is 19, has no college debt, will be graduated, am already a landowner. I'm already that much far ahead, but I'm still no different than my sister, who's going to go to a 4-year school, but we have the same background, and because of that, we're both going to be successful in different ways. But we're still taking advantage of the resources that are in front of us, rather than just pigeonholing kids into this program that only want to do manufacturing or only want to do technology. We've broadened it up to where no matter what your career path is, you're getting this advantage through this program that we've set up, rather than just pointing out one field or one student or another.
Byron, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Getting to your point, when you talk about how, I'm a school teacher. I'm a pretty good one. My students listen to me. But when peers come back, it's so impactful. So if you could, you're obviously leaders, you're sitting here now, but if you could create programs to where you go into those schools and you talk about the things that you've done, that would be very, very, very impactful to limiting the stigma, because having when I have students from high school come in to speak to my kids, they are at attention. They soak up every single word, especially when you can show the success that you've had. That may be something that you guys could look at doing, handling yourselves, is, okay, we want to start a program, we want to go back in and speak to our schools and lay out those options for them and tell them why we chose these options and the success that we've had because of those choices that we made. Just a suggestion.
First, to the students, you have a lot of educators at the table, and I want to just tell you how proud we are of you and how brave you are today and how articulate, and we love your ideas. I want you to consider something. So we've heard a couple things about a mind shift, and I will tell you, I think the conversation that we're having with all of your input deals with a mind shift from punitive accountability to professional responsibility. And so to wrap your mind around about what your schools are under is a punitive accountability system. To make my point, we're worried about ECAs. We're worried about the finances that we receive to incentivize those kids who get academic honor diploma or technical honor diplomas, but not the others. It's a punitive system that's set up, and I understand why, but the shift needs to happen to professional responsibility. The charge of this panel, interestingly, and I don't know if you're aware, is what do you do with those students who don't pass an ECA? What are the alternative pathways? The pathways you've discussed today, I've not heard any of these. I'm going to read these to you and tell you what we brought to the table, what came out of law. One, if you don't need an ECA, I have to put my glasses on because I'm almost 50, you can either pass the ECA, you can pass an IB exam, AP exam, SAT, ACT, an industry certified or industry recognized certification, ASFAB, or any other pathway. So they're very laden with assessment. I've not heard any of that come out of your mouth. I've not heard any discussion about you have to make sure kids pass all these tests to make sure we're ready to go into the workforce or college or whatever you're going to do in the future. I think it's really important for us to hear that and think about the number 8, which says any other pathway approved by the state board, because the conversations we've had today are way beyond assessment. But yet in our minds and how we've been trained as administrators in the field, it's very focused on assessment. And so I would love to hear your ideas, your feedback about that piece of it.
I think you make a good point on that. You as teachers and people in education only see it as what you're scoring on tests, and that we kind of need to open the eyes that it's not just about tests. And my dad can kind of testify that. He has his master's in K-6 education. He's been a teacher for over 25 years. And he's actually gone and spoke with me about this program to open people's eyes in the community that, hey, I went to 6 years of schooling at IU. I'm a teacher. I should be one of the biggest preachers of you need to go to a 4-year education. And he's kind of the guy that swayed me from just sticking to that and trying this program, because he realized how valuable it is, and that just because, and that I could be, assessed more off of my hard-working attitude and, my maturity rather than what I scored on, the SAT. I still got A's and B's in school, but my SAT score wasn't exceptionally high. I never scored super high on those tests, but he was like, this is your opportunity to show people that just because your number on one test does not define how successful you will be. And that's what we're trying to do with this program is not get away from your knowledge in the classroom, but open up different ways that we can grade kids. So we have the SAT and the ACT, but now our community also grades us on, our showing up on time skills and our speaking skills. And we've kind of combined that all into one program so that different kids have different strengths, so you're graded on everything, not just what one person's strength is. So if you're not the smartest person in the classroom, there's also a criteria over here that you can be graded on for how well you can work with your hands, or there's a criteria over here on how well of a leader you can be, so that we're not just looking at kids based off of their test scores and making that define who they are as a person.
I can't help.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go
All
ahead,
right.
and then we'll go over.
It's real quick, but I can't help but agree with that. All my life, I really agreed with Sydney when she said it, that I felt like high school is survival. I've been focused on getting that 4.0, getting that A, rather than learning what's good for me. And as an example, I'm a straight A student, I'm a co-valedictorian, I've been top of the class, yada yada. I've been seen as having a positive work ethic. I have a very good friend who is not such an academic. He's never been a test taker. He's never been motivated in calculus. But he gets up at 3 a.m. every morning to go work on a dairy farm. And he's been seen as having a negative work ethic. So I want to know what makes him any more it makes me any more qualified than him. You get what I'm saying? Neither one of us have a better work ethic than the other. So I think we really need to step away from assessment so much in test-taking form and focus more on what our students are doing in the field and what they're doing outside of school. I guess more the technical aspect.
Going off both of them, I do realize that the state does need to have a standardized test and like a bar to be able to calculate whether they're making improvements and whether you have more kids passing or more kids failing. Like, I get that. But when are we going to start seeing the students as less than a number? Because honestly, that's what I feel like sometimes whenever we get like the numbers back on if our school passed enough for the ECA or an ISTEP. Like, all you're doing is looking at the numbers. But are you looking at all the kids that are actually improving, the kids that are actually still coming to school and going to like places like the Career Center and getting that dual credit so that they can be ready for life outside of school, outside of high school, outside of college, and actually ready to make a difference in the community and being part of the workforce? So.
And I think it's important to note, which I think is hard to wrap your mind around, when you start making that mind shift from that punitive accountability to professional responsibility does not mean a drop in rigor. It does not mean a drop in expectations. And the people who are doing it and doing it well fully understand that.
I think that I agree with Sydney. You need to be able to have a way to have numbers because we need statistics for all these different things so that we know what our students are achieving. But we can't set the bar so high that they can't achieve it, and we can't set it so low that when they go into the workforce, they're not ready. They don't have the skills that they need. And so standardized testing is important to an extent, but personally, I didn't have problems with like passing the ECA, but I know that my counterparts in my classes, my peers, they will get pulled out of these classes to go get remediation. And they will try again and again and again, and they cannot pass their ECAs or their different standardized tests that they need to graduate. They've gone through all this remediation, they're getting pulled out of the classes that we are deeming important right now. So is that really what's going to help them succeed? On the paper that Mr. Bierce so graciously provided to us, it says that it says that 70% of students are not, they need remediation for their math, and they're not college ready. And what is going to help the students get those math skills? Is it the remediation and the focus on passing an ECA? Or is it in their classes where they're applying those math or those English skills that ultimately they're going to use in the workforce? It's not whatever they're learning for this test, it's what they're going to end up using the rest of their lives. So I don't want to just keep playing devil's advocate because that's what I feel like I've been doing this whole time, which is important, but you have to have, you know, a solution too. But I think tests that, since we do need something measurable, tests that are adaptive, more like the NWEAs, where you take them in different cycles, or I don't know exactly how to put it. You take it every so often, and the test is adaptive. It gets harder as you go, and you get the results back right away. It's not like the SAT or ISTEP or ECA where you have to wait to get the results back and you can't see what it is. The NWEA, you get it then, and you can see, like, this is where we need to improve in the classroom. These are the skills we need to work on. So adaptive tests like that where you can get the results back right away and you can take multiple times and it's not as much of a, I don't want to say hassle, but it's not like a big, scary, I don't know if I can pass it. If I don't pass it, I'm not going to graduate sort of thing. I think those are a little bit better. You still get numbers, but it's not as intimidating, and also it works with your skill set. So as a solution, I think that'd be a little bit better, but also the work that you're going to do in the classroom, that you're learning, that you're going to use in the workforce, I think is still way more important, but I understand that you need something measurable. So
because I need to make sure that we have our advocates and parents as well. But I want to ask one more question related to this, because I think the other thing in the mindset change is that really this panel is not necessarily about what do we do if kids don't pass an ECA. It's about what would be the right pathways for those children, right? So it doesn't have to be an ECA. So I think that's a mindset change in and of itself. So my last student-directed question is, and then I promise parents, because we want to have that question. Pam, you were ready to answer, and I want to make sure we're ready for that, and we spend some time on that. But I think it's important because you students have had some great points. So if you each want to give, if you want to do a real quick popcorn off of each other, there's a teacher in me coming out. But I'm going to make each and every one of you, all 6 of you right now, are now going to be policymakers. So you can choose, you can either be a representative or a senator, I don't care which, but you're going to take these guys' place for a minute. How's that? How do we ensure, back to a comment that Mr. Watts made a few minutes ago, hey, we ought to leave this to the schools. And Patrick Henry and me says, yep, that's exactly right? So my question is, what do pathways look like, given the discussion that we've had, if you have a thought on that? And then how do we make sure, because these are the questions that these guys ask, how do we make sure that every school gives the same experiences that you've had? You have schools that are doing a good job with this, right? That is evident today. How do we make sure that every school is giving their students that, in your opinion? This is your opportunity. You're now a representative or senator, I don't care which. King or emperor, whichever way. Anybody got any thoughts there?
Yeah. So I would say one of the things that kind of hinders students from successing is the staffing of teachers. So I know some of them are not, like when you go to college, most people are not like, I'm going to be a teacher. It's tough because the reality is that you don't get paid enough, right? So that's one thing that hinders people. If you're really good at math, you could be a math teacher, but you could also work at a math, at a place where you can employ your math skills, and that can get you more recognition or better pay, whatever you want. And like being able to staff like the right members, right teachers for each school would definitely fix like the 70% math failing ECA scores that we have in the state. Just having a right staffing strategy for every single school to make sure that every teacher is competent, because I have had experiences myself, and I'm sure most of you guys have had at least one, where a teacher is not, you just look at the teacher and you're like, wow, like really? You could do so much better. And the staffing has to be improved. I know I'm sounding kind of like bad and I shouldn't be saying it, but it's the truth. Some teachers are not staffed in the correct way, and it all starts from them because they motivate you to move farther and work harder and like focus on what you want to do, and they can guide you to what you want to do in college and in your career. So that's what I think should be fixed.
I would tell them to think differently. I know a lot of times when we go around and we present this to other schools, they worry too much about, well, when do your kids go to Ivy Tech and when do they go to the business? And that doesn't matter, because Batesville is its own community. We have a schedule and a system that works for our community with our Ivy Tech and our 4 businesses. The other schools are too focused on how we're doing it. They're not willing to think differently, like, well, we only have 3 businesses, so we need to flip-flop this, and then our kids will leave earlier for this program than that program. They can't mirror each community as a whole. Not every community has an Ivy Tech, but most communities are close enough to a career center, an online schooling of some possibility. So I think the schools need to look at all the available options that they have and not just focus on, well, we don't have an Ivy Tech, so this isn't going to work and move on, but they might have a career center, a Vincennes type school. So I think that's the biggest problem, is schools not looking at it in enough different ways to figure out a model and sit down on what works for their community, because this program is going to be different for every community, in how it's operated, but at the end of the day, it's going to be putting out kids that are ready to go into the workforce, and everyone's going to come out of this the same, even if they've gone through it differently.
So worry more about the concept and not the nuts and bolts.
Yes.
Particularly in the beginning, right?
Focus on how to get the kids out of this, ready for college. Doesn't matter how they get there. Just look at all the resources you have in your community, have them all come together and sit down and figure out what is going to work best for all those resources.
Going off of what Caleb just said, I feel like each school district needs to see itself as itself and to see its improvement in itself, not really necessarily comparing itself to other school districts, because as I said, every school district's different, their resources are different, and as long as they are seeing improvement within themselves, I feel like they should see that as a positive, and it should be motivating them, opposed to comparing them to another school and being like, oh, well, we should have done this, or wow, they're so much ahead of us. It's kind of like a self-motivation type of thing to better yourself kind of things, because you can't compare a big school compared to a little school on the amount of resources they have, depending on where they're located as well. It just differs, and so it's unfair to compare the two, and then the smaller school feel discouraged because compared to the big school, they just don't have the resources. But if the smaller school is still making just as much progress, I feel like they should still be rewarded and should constantly just getting motivation to be like, okay, you're doing great, like just not as much like negative feedback towards them, because if you're comparing all of them.
I think going back to what Carol and what, well, that was a while ago, but and what Sydney said, is having the resources that you have and sharing them, and that can be in a variety of ways, because we need to make sure that all the schools are getting like a baseline, that they all have the same, but all the schools, all the districts, all the communities are different. So maybe one school is going to focus more on, like in the Frankfurt community, one of the public comments, all the kids in their community, they go straight into like a manufacturing job, or they go back to the farm. Whereas maybe in a more urban setting, those students want to go to a 4-year or 2-year school, or it just depends. It depends on the community. But sharing resources on different levels, whether it be, this is the outreach thing that we did, this is our peer alum sort of track that we've done to make sure that the students that we've had go through the program that are successful are coming back and educating the new students, or whether it be you're near a career center or a college, an online school, and you're partnering with them to make sure that your students are having those opportunities. It's that fine line, because you don't want to require certain things that you can't fulfill, but you want to make sure that all the students are getting the best experiences. So it's sharing those resources and making sure that you're connecting with who you can, making sure that you have parent involvement, that you have teacher involvement. That's what's going to make you successful, and that's what's going to sort of help create the standard to making sure that the kids are getting the best education possible.
Okay, parents and advocates. Payne's like, yes!
Yes.
So, the question was asked earlier, what do y'all need, right? And also, what does, from the parents' eyes, advocates' eyes, what does success look like?
Okay, first of all, we need communication. There's so many avenues that we're hearing, and also we are coming up with the experience that we had. And we were stressed to go to school, get that 4-year degree. So we're still on that path. So now I guess we have to get off of it, and I can speak from experience because I have 4 children, 2 boys, 2 girls. My oldest, which I should have listened to her, but I'm the parent, and I parented, and I said, no, you need that 4-year degree, then you can go back and do whatever you want to do. We did that, and of course, now she's doing what she wanted to do, not what she went to school for, social work. Now she's an entrepreneur. She's doing what she wants to do, but I should have listened to her after $60,000 worth of debt. So I'm saying this to hopefully I can save someone else from all of that debt, college debt that we occurred, because if the kid is really not wanting to go to college, then as a parent, I needed to hear that and see that there was another avenue to where she could have perhaps went. Cosmetology was her strongest point, and we had a career center, but I didn't see the value in the career center because after you did so many hours, what did you get? Nothing. If it would have said that she would have been able to get so much and then she was like near to graduation or would have amounted to a certificate, I would have pushed it. But because I didn't see the value in that, so I think the message is communicating with parents and to show them the value added, whatever it is. So I hope that answers one of the questions.
Well, and I think parents, you're right, are so geared towards sending their kids to college, and so are the schools. The high schools are just pushing kids towards college. And I think we need to start in the elementary schools, teaching parents, educating parents that there is another avenue. It's not just college. And they're looking at the ECA scores. You know, they have to get that score up. They, you know, a certain percentage of their kids have to pass it. And that's what they're concentrating on. So gone are all of the extra programs that they used to have in the schools. We're trying to get junior achievement back in our schools. But teachers are saying, I don't have time for it. I've got to teach this, this, and this. They have to pass all of these. I've got 3 reading groups. I've got 4 math groups. They don't have time for junior achievement that teaches some of those life skills of entrepreneurship and how to do a checkbook and how to live within your means of what you're making. They don't have time for all of those programs. So I think we do need to educate parents and start at the elementary level.
I totally agree that waiting till high school to figure out what you're going to do is a big mistake, because in high school I knew what I was going to do. I was going to college, I was getting that 4-year degree. Well, I sit here $30,000 in debt and don't carry the degree at all. But I have had the opportunity, I have 3 children, and all 3 of them are so completely different. And I think that's one thing we have to remember, that it's not a cookie cutter system. What works for Billy isn't going to work for Jill. Exposing our children at an earlier age. At our school, we have a college mentors program, and starting in 1st grade, 1 day a week, you go to IUPUI and you hang out with a college student. That is at a very low income inner city school. Our school houses 5 of the homeless shelters here in Indianapolis. We're the catchment area for 5 shelters. So to give kids who are coming from the bottom the opportunity at a very young age to see, hey, we can go do this. In my daughter's class last year, they had a day of career day of everyone dressing what you would be. We had the President of the United States, we had a veteran, a veterinarian, we had everything you could think of. Girls that were going to be engineers, and that's due to the fact that our school takes the time after school to have STEM club where the kids are exposed to different opportunities. So I, as a parent, say waiting till they get to junior high or high school is a little too late. And we also need to realize that we're training kids for jobs that don't even exist. If you think when we were back in school, the kids, as these young people were speaking about the children who chose the career paths, I think about the kids who went to, back then it was Central 9. You went down to Central 9 and took your automotive classes or whatever. But all of us were exposed to some home ec classes, some basic life skill classes, some woodworking. And I think those are things that we've gotten away from, are those basics. And so when we speak to the life skills, these kids are nodding their head. It really hit home when he said he's valedictorian, but he has a problem opening the plastic bags. That's kind of sad that we're spending all this time on academics, but we're not thinking about the basics. And for most of us, you got to have the basics before you can walk in and get that job or even that interview. If you don't know the proper skills of getting your foot in the door, then you've lost out right then.
I just want to add one more thing when we talk about communicating with the parents in the schools, although different schools are made up differently. I think we put a lot on counselors, and it may be another position that needs to be made, because communicating with one counselor for like 100 kids is totally impossible and frustrating for a parent. So I think there needs to be either some other job set aside, because counselors are counselors, and as I remember, our counselors not what they do today. So I think there needs to be another position either created or just in a way where it just deals with pathways.
Well, and I personally think that's where you've got to get, and I'm that parent at my school. When I say, hey guys, there's this and this that we can talk about, I think it might be a good idea if we all sit down and think about having program X, Y, and Z. The other parents are willing to look and say, you know, that's that parent who's always up at the school, who's always volunteering, who my kids look to and know if she says stop, needs to stop. So you've got to get the parent, each school needs to have a group of parents that they can depend on to be the spokesperson for the majority of the parents, because what those other kids do and what those other kids are exposed to affects our children too.
And I think, one of the students pointed out earlier how there's been this shift of the last many decades in what we view the path to employment as being, and how we've really shifted up to making college much more of that. I think we have to acknowledge that that's in large part because it's just an easy thing for people to understand. And in some ways it also releases K through 12 education from responsibility of students getting employed. Like, we punt that over to post-secondary and say, hey, success looks like go to college, and then the colleges will own responsibility for that. And I think that we have to acknowledge that in addition to the fact that that has happened, we have in the last several decades unwittingly allowed for this bifurcation by where we had intentionally allowed people to believe that there's a tier and that the most able are the ones who we want to go to college, and then if you're not capable of doing that, then we look for something else for you. And in some cases that was done intentionally, in some cases it was not, but the legacy of that is really holding a lot of children, a lot of communities back, because there are now young people who believe, and they believe it because we're messaging this to them directly and indirectly all the time, that if you are value achievement and learning, you need to go to college. And there are a lot of opportunities out there for them that don't require that, but we've got to actually express that. I mean, we talked about, the number of jobs and the percentage of jobs out there for young people who will need post-secondary education. We need to express that to parents and the community so they understand, like, the reason for looking at your career holistically and thinking about after high school, what's the pathway? I mean, I think if you think broadly, there's certainly post-secondary education, 2-year and 4-year. There's going directly into some form of employment, but the job that you get when you walk out of high school is probably not the job you're going to have for the rest of your life, and we need to be clear with young people and families that whatever that job looks like, it's the first step in their career. And then even, we think about enlisting in military service as another, intentional career path. But I think we have to own responsibility for not proactively enough communicating that we value all of these things, and they all have their place, and that we value, learning in every setting, whether it's career, military service, or college, that we value achievement, and that we value fit, and so that young people and families should feel empowered that the choice they're making, to the extent that they understand why it's the right choice for them, is value. I don't know that exists, because it feels to me like success looks like there are lots of options for students, and that they have the skills and knowledge and comfort to pick what they think is the right one for them, knowing that none of those choices should preclude them from going into one of the others. I mean, we're seeing now today in this country, many people go to college, but it isn't the traditional, I graduate high school and go to college. People are going to college later and later in life. Many people are going into careers and then coming back into post-secondary. But I think that, when you put the parent hat on, most parents have no idea that that's what's going on. I think we've got to do a better job in schools and school systems communicating that to parents so they can better understand the decisions that they have to make for their children, and understand how it is dynamic and different than it was 30 years ago. And I think she's exactly right. We have to acknowledge that for many of us as parents, the world that we're preparing our children from is very different than the world we were getting prepared for, and that frankly our ability to predict what the jobs they may be going after several years from now is probably pretty limited. So we've got to be focused on the set of experiences that prepare them to move from one field to another and to adjust and to learn, because that's what their careers are going to look like, which is very different than I think what a lot of us thought we were getting into when we started off.
Well, and you're right. Parents have been shut out for many years, and they haven't been included in the decisions and what's going on in the schools. The school counselors are the ones pushing the kids, teachers are pushing the kids, and parents are kind of left out in the dark. And I think we have a lot of educating to do when it comes to parents. Like I said, they've been left out. They don't know what's out there. We had a great conversation a couple weeks ago with Dr. Keene, and he talked about some of the areas that they were looking at. And when he talked about career readiness, my head has been spinning. I mean, we're like talking about our convention that comes up in April or May and doing something around careers and inviting students from all over the state with their parents to come and see what careers are out there. Not only the careers like being a plumber or an electrician, but also the college, you know, if you want to be a lawyer or a scientist or something, but bring that all together so parents can see the big picture of what's going on, because they don't have a clue anymore.
And I just want to add to that, because I think that one of the things that I think hasn't been talked about a lot today, that we have to also put out there the realities of people's earning potential in all of these, because I think that's part of what's happened, is we've also been thinking in terms of, well, if you want to earn at this level, you have to choose this narrow band of things. I think the band of things that have high earning potential has actually grown, but I think a lot of parents don't know that because the schools haven't told them, and a lot of parents we bring our kids to school and we think school's going to give them everything they need to be prepared for success beyond life and our jobs to make sure that they go and do well. And I think sometimes the schools aren't properly guiding the students, and they're definitely not informing the parents.
It's the stigma of, you know, I don't want my kid to be a plumber because, you know, they're dirty hands or whatever, I don't know. But they make a lot of money. And if you're looking at, you know, you can spend $60,000 on college, be in debt, and not have a job. Or you can go
or hate your job.
Exactly. So.
And a lot of grandparents too are raising kids, and we have to also think about that too, because there's a communication gap. Whereas when, as part of my PTA, which I'm involved in, I'm noticing that I'm running into a lot of grandparents, and so just communicating to them what needs to be done, that makes it difficult too. So I guess in all, what we really need is maybe a benchmark, or, you know, I would like to see, I think we're saying elementary, maybe like 5th or 6th grade, that we start to intentionally make sure that we kind of understand what the pathways, you know, may be, and also educating the parent as to what the pathways are too, because we are their first teachers and we can influence them. Like I said, although I influenced it, I looked at it and I'm like, wow, I should not have told her to do that. She was telling me, Ma, I don't want to do this. And I'm like, no, you're going to thank me later, $60,000 later. So, you know, I do regret that. But the other ones too I have one at Earlham, I have one at IU Bloomington, and one is looking at Yale. So I don't feel as though that, you know, I'm such a bad parent, but still you have to know your strengths and weaknesses. And as a parent, you are the first teacher, and you do know what kid can do what. But as I grew up, it was like, go to college, go to college, go to college. So
I just want to draw out one point that Mr. Biddle made. I realize that this task force is looking at these kind of capstone experiences, but the point about the opportunity to look at an individual once they've left high school. I want to point to Brownsburg Community School District that follows individuals after they leave their high schools for up to a year or beyond to understand whether or not there has been impact on the pathways that they've chosen or impact on their various educational experiences. I think that's a really important opportunity to not just start at 5th grade, but to better understand whether or not students have found their self-identified success. I have no idea whether or not we could, the state could look at a Gallup-like poll for high schools that exists at Purdue University and other institutions now, but I think that would be a really great way for us to understand whether or not there's been impact after students graduate.
I just want to add a little bit to the conversation. I think the conversation has been really good, and I really appreciate the conversation around pathways looking differently post-high school. And it's really nice that we have students around the table who are leaders and doing really well in school. I happen to represent the students who really struggle in school. And so even though I'm interested and very confident and like the conversation of what we're having regarding post-high school, for us, we're worried about that graduation pathway to get the high school diploma. Because we want to make sure that we do have a diploma to receive. We want to make sure that we are counted as a graduate. I have to say that at least once. We have some nice diplomas that are out there that can help students receiving special education services. I think what we don't have around the state is a lot of schools who are able to offer the courses that students with disabilities can achieve at to be able to earn that high school diploma itself. There was a bill last year that passed that kind of widened the door to those courses, but we need to make sure that technology is there and able to help schools who don't have staffing to offer a lot of different courses, but there is at least that availability across community lines to get into other schools to be able to access some of those courses, because that is a big issue to us. To Dr. McCormick's issue, I think all of those different pathways are important to the graduation. Those other graduation pathways is really where my students fit in. And we need to make sure that there are multiple pathways available, because without those courses and without the wideness and variety of courses available, we're not even going to be able to achieve a diploma to even think about what's post-high school.
I'd like to add on, going off of what Dr. McCormick said, and I don't know her name, but I'm sorry, the lady who was just talking. Ms. Dawson? Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't say her name. We need to make sure that the students can achieve those graduation requirements, and they're not just graduation, but making sure that they don't get behind and they're on track. But with the academic and technical honors diplomas, if they want to achieve those diplomas, there are so many requirements that you have to achieve that it's like, is that actually necessary? Like, one of the ones for the academic honors diploma is either taking 3 years of a language or 2 years of 2 different languages, but is that hindering them from taking the classes that they're going to need to succeed? Is that actually going to help them? Is that requirement something that will help them and that schools can provide? Because maybe they don't want to take Spanish, but that's the only class they offer. And then with the special services, my sister and I both have IEPs for physical disabilities, and then also she's behind a little bit just because of that kind of stuff. And making sure that we provide those resources, I think that my district does an excellent job making sure that there are different sources of technology she can use, like the Google Read and Write, because she used to have a trach and she was on a ventilator for a really long time, and so she's behind about 3 years with her speech, which is she's not able to pass her iRead test. She can't excel in the classroom because of that. So making sure that students have those resources is really important to make sure they don't get behind earlier on so that they can achieve those requirements. And then just a note for you, Pam, you were talking about something other than a counselor. In our Career Center, we have what are called career pathway specialists, and their jobs are to either focus on the dual credits that the students are receiving through Vinson's or through Ivy Tech, or they go out and find specific internships for the students, or they set up career days. Like we have like a career fair. We also have like a college fair where like people from the military, from 2-year schools, 4-year schools, from different employers will come in and help students find post-secondary options. So having a position like that at a school might be beneficial. I know that the career pathway specialists are some of the most impactful people in my life. I've never really felt a connection with a counselor except with them. Those are the people that have made sure I'm going to be successful after school and during school. They've helped me, like my first job, I worked for the Boys and Girls Club. I coached 2 robotics teams, and I never would have gotten my foot in the door because I'm a year behind. I'm a year younger than everyone in my grade. It's so hard for me to find a job, but they help me find that employment opportunity. So having people like that go out and specifically look for those opportunities for kids that aren't a counselor though, and that can talk to both employers and parents and teachers and the kids, I think that's a position too that would be beneficial in like your local areas.
So I have a number of comments, and I'm not sure how they tie all in, but I feel like before the time ends, I should probably explain some of my notes here. First of all, I don't want to lose sight of whatever the pathway is needs to be rigorous, right? I'm all for flexibility, and I'm all for we have kids going in different directions, but it has to be rigorous, right? When I look at the college readiness reports that Jason shared with us, one point we didn't get to, right, was our, we spent a lot of time talking about the career side of things, and that's important. I feel like many of us who have been in this conversation think that for the college students, we know what those pathways are, those check marks, right? It's remediation, pre-score, and the SAT, ACT. Those are done, right? But when I look at our average freshman GPA and our average freshman credit hours earned, and our honor students average a 3.1, our core 40, right? Our state's diploma, our core 40. The average freshman GPA is a 2.2. 30 credit hours would be the goal for 1 year, right? 15 and 15, that's what a full course looks like. Even our honor students are averaging 30 credit hours a year. Core 40 students are getting 17 credit hours a year. So I worry about the rigor and what is a diploma work. So I don't want us to lose sight on even the college path, right? Like there's probably still some work that needs to be done there. To kind of follow up on Dr. Brown's comment from the previous meeting, challenge the status quo, right? We think of high school as, well, K-12 high school is the last 4 years. Why? Why is it 4 years, right? Why are we not looking at other options? The folks from the Crossing talked about, they've taken school and put it inside the place of employment. Why can't we rethink that, right? We would talk about wanting to get rid of the stigma of students going down the vocational or the CTE path. Leaving to go to a place of employment, or I'm going to go to college today while you're still in high school, to me that's a great way to get rid of the stigma. So I think we just need to challenge everyone, and you all who have to sit on all 8 of these, and I get to leave and just watch you online or from the audience next time, but I challenge you to think broadly and look and don't forget about the rigor. I could go on, but I think those are probably the most pressing points that I wanted to make. So thank you.
Alan and I were sort of talking about this a little bit earlier. Data always tells a story, but it always just tells part of a story too. And I think coming from a high school, I've seen many kids go off to college and bounce back, not because they weren't capable, but because maybe we shoved them that direction and it's not even really the direction they wanted to go or should have gone. And it's not always about rigor or capability. A lot of times it's about interest. And so I just caution us to one of the pieces of data that we were looking at is down at the bottom where it talks about completion. And so if 65% of our kids are going off to college, and I'm looking at the core 40, for example, and only 47% of those with a core 40 finished in 6 years. You know, part of the data that's not here is where did those kids go? Did they, it's quite possible some of them found a different career path and ended up, I mean, this data doesn't tell the whole story. So I just think that we need to keep that in mind, and it is about rigor and it isn't about rigor. It's just, that's not the whole story.
Which then goes to Amy's point of how do we get that data to where we have everything, right? Which becomes the interesting part from a system standpoint, correct?
And I think something, about the readiness that we've really mostly talked, or at least in terms of the data, the readiness is really all about these sort of academic things that are, the point was made earlier, are easily measured. I think the challenge is, and I think in particular any of us who've been teachers and worked with children, or any of us who are parents, would acknowledge that there are other readiness factors that don't show up here. And I think the question is, how do you account for those readiness factors that are maybe more qualitative in the pathways and provide opportunities to confirm that a student has achieved them before we mark them as they are ready? Because I think in some ways, these are simpler for us to quantify and say, yep, okay, they've scored these scores on these tests, they know how to read, write, do math, do the things that we can easily measure, they're ready, and then we send them off to college, and many of them run right in the teeth of all sorts of things that mean some of the young people have said today that they actually weren't ready to deal with, that might improve some of these. But the question is, how do you measure those, and how do you measure them in ways that are not punitive, but are designed to help nudge students toward developing those skills?
Going on to Jason's paper, that's what we're discussing. I think, while this doesn't paint the whole picture, nothing ever does, I think it does paint a portion of the picture. And frankly, the portion of that picture that's not very good. I mean, it's unacceptable that almost 6% of our students need remediation in math. There's all kinds of different reasons and things that come into play there, I would agree with, but while we celebrate all of those things, that all the different pathways that we want to use, that's fine, but going back to Caitlin's point, we can't forget about this when we're creating these pathways, because everyone here has said prepared at some point today, I believe. This shows that that's not the case. So how do we fix this while staying flexible and while creating pathways for students that don't want to go to college? Agree that it's such different conversations. And there's different skill sets, and I can appreciate those. But we need to make sure that we don't forget to address this when we're trying to create those pathways for students that this is not what they want to do.
On the statistics, I think a point of clarity, so a question on my part. You said 67% need remediation. On this chart,
56.
56%. This chart says 14% of students need remediation. So
that's in both. That's in math. It's 56% math only, 14% math and language arts, 29% language arts only.
But that chart is of students who need remediation. 56% need remediation in math. In terms of total number who actually need remediation, it's 14%. So of that 14%, 56% needed in math. Am I looking at these charts correctly?
You are. You're looking at it two different ways.
Yeah.
Of the students in remediation, the vast majority is in mathematics, right? We're talking about the total number of students who need remediation overall as a state has dropped slightly over the past few years. But what these data don't show, the aggregate, is the disparity across the state. We have really high remediation rates in some parts of the state, not so high in other parts of the state. We have really high rates of people graduating with general diplomas and really low rates in other parts. So, I would urge everyone to go online and look at the profiles for your individual schools and districts, because it does paint a more representative picture of everything that's going on. Every time we aggregate things up, we lose some of the nuance of the message. Thanks for making the data referee.
And I will have to say, in all fairness to K-12, and again, I'm not saying you bring that rigor down, because that's not what I'm about, and I would hate to see that as the state. However, when you look at the amount of students needing remediation, the control gate is admissions into higher ed. So there are some students that get admitted into higher ed that some of our high schools could tell you, how in the world did they get in? I mean, you're as perplexed as the student and the parent is. And so I think that's a whole other discussion, and I know we're short on time, but I think the admissions of our universities, IB Tech, completely different, community college, I mean, that's a different conversation, but some of our students who are getting into thresholds, well, I guess even with some of our community college kids, I mean, some ownership back to the high schools to say, is this appropriate for this child? We can tell you absolutely not. But they're going into school and they're not successful, and everybody's surprised they need remediation and they're not making it. So that's a whole other disconnect that we could have a conversation with the admissions threshold that we're seeing for some of our students who are getting in, and we're as perplexed as anybody.
I think it's also important to talk again about the availability of courses, and specifically math and the remediation piece, because there are a lot of students with disabilities who can pass algebra. You put them in a 2-semester algebra class, they're probably going to get a D, and then they're probably going to need remediation. You put them in an algebra class that's over 4 semesters, they're actually going to learn those math techniques and might end up with a B and no longer need remediation. So a lot of it is the way that it's taught in the schools. And again, if you go into it with the premise of let's actually teach them the skills other than how to survive the algebra class, they're going to need less remediation.
Okay. In the honor of time here, Mike? Sure. You weren't here the whole time, but you have 5 minutes or less to give us a recap of what you've seen since you've been here. Really loud in your loud voice, please. And everyone else, while he's doing that, think about, we're going to go around the table and you're going to give the value that you want us to carry forward to the next that gets added to the last time's value. So be thinking about that. So let's go, Mike. Hurry, hurry, hurry.
Thank you all. Students, especially, thanks for joining. That was a treat. Good to hear. I apologize for not being able to face everybody in the boards. What I heard, obviously, was a lot about descriptions of what do we want these pathways to look like, how might they behave, what are some of those qualities, what are the conditions, what are some of the neighborhoods of those pathways. And really, there's a reframing that I think this group has come to that I hope resonates, that I thought I heard. Really trying to understand what's the difference between possibly changing a couple of logistics and understanding, how do we treat tests differently to a reframing culture, which is a word that I heard and I was hearing in the conversation as well. I'll show you a brief model that Dr. Ernest knows well in just a second that might help frame that conversation. I'll move in front of the board. So what do these pathways look like? Some of the words that we heard over and over were flexibility. What does this environment look like? What does a conducive environment look like for those pathways? Really the underlying sort of premise that I heard is how do we learn how to learn? So what's that platform? And what does readiness mean for students to be able to be college ready and career ready? It sounds like defining what ready means and what does preparation actually mean is something that's still up in the air a little bit. Obviously, if you had a clear definition for that, that might shake some other things out. Discussion of, especially along these 3 tracks, practical experience, soft skills, and academic skills. Very nice historical context, and some of this is grounded in events of the past century that really carried on for a long time. In many ways, we're reacting to phenomena that are changing right before our very eyes. And so, what does it mean to design for the future? What does it mean to design for jobs and readiness? But we don't even know what that is yet. This reframing of moving from punitive accountability to professional responsibility. The word rigor got mentioned several times. We're not talking about taking rigor out of the system. We're trying to increase our understanding of what that system means. How do we assess this? It's a question, obviously, that's very relevant and comes up all the time. Specifically, how does testing potentially account for this? For me, that question does get to the very real implications of the practical side of things. Also trying to balance that with, well, what does a reframing of this actually mean? What's missing here? Opportunities that students don't know about or want for any reason will be lost. So what does that education look like? How can students be aware of these things? How can parents, how can support systems that flesh all this out? How can those be conducive to students being aware of all these? Let's see. The social pressure and that stigma, that got to that point. This is a much larger system that we're trying to influence. Communities, this is not So hearing from parents and other invested individuals, what I heard from them was this model of communication and open visibility, especially understanding how do people get educated, how do we build this whole system, and how does that system start to become stronger in itself. I say the word system a lot because I've heard that over and over. How do we get a sense of the big picture? If you're sitting there wondering, okay, what is my kid going to do when he has these test scores, how do you start to back out and look at the big picture? It's not easy. Many parents have a very different frame of mind from where their students are coming from. Sometimes those parents create that network themselves and they become that connected function. Everybody said over and over, this needs to start very early. We're getting into this much too late for when it can be relevant, especially toward that cultural piece. Some specific examples, exemplars of college mentors, counselors doing good work. Again, that point, we're learning skills for jobs that don't exist. Looking into this and leaning into this, what data becomes meaningful? How do you measure what data do we not have that now in this new reimagining becomes very relevant? How can we assess at every level the impact of these new frames, what these new systems pathways? How can we understand and maintain that rigor in a much more complex system? And that feels like one of the big questions. It's not going to be very easy to get to, but if we don't do it, none of this will happen. That point of the non-college path is not something to think of as a second tier, so how do we reframe that? And then again, this new question, what does it mean to be ready? So what are we actually preparing for? How do we fix what's broken at the same time? So look at some very real numbers that we need to change and move the lever on. How do you both think of that short-term need as well as this longer-term shift towards something new? Very quickly, a model that we'll talk maybe more about later, but the lowest level tasks, next up logistics, next up tactics, next up strategy, next up policy, culture, and philosophy. This is a model called Vantage Points. I hope you don't mind my springing, Dr. Ernest, but it feels like the right way into this conversation. I'll talk more about this with anybody that wants to know. But as a framing of sort of where your discussion went, it felt like everybody was saying we need to move up this. We need to move from some of these tasks and logistics and moving toward these cultural, policy, philosophical questions. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so last thing, we're going to have everybody give their value, and rather than always starting on my right or left, and you guys being nervous about where we're going to start, I'm going to start with Amy Marsh. Amy, give us your value, we'll go to your left.
Are we doing like a one word or a sentence? What's your
Whatever works for you, just not a 5-minute dissertation.
Gotcha. I think my value would be that the pathway has value over the lifespan.
And so I think the biggest one would be choice. To give everyone a choice, whether it's the educators, the parents, the students, there needs to be choices.
I would say rigor. I think it's important that I know we've had some exemplary CTE students, but to make sure that all of those CTE programs are also that strong, and we have AP tests that kind of measure all of that, but to have something that we can also use with CTE.
Say rigor, and back to my point on, and stealing it from Dr. Brown's point, the status quo, right? I mean, competency-based, how do we think outside of the box, big picture, you know, what is an iPhone going to look like in 20 years, right? Will there even be one? We can think, you know, we don't know. But when we think about what does school look like in 20 years, well, it's going to be a K-12 system, right? Like, so how do we transition our thought process on that?
And I would say equity. I think that however we differentiate the pathways, we need them to be set up that all students that go through them are set up to be successful. I think that as it exists right now, it's clear that it sets up some students to be more successful than others, which is not equitable. I think we need to really address that.
Mine would probably be communication. We need to have strong communication between all the way from the state board all the way to the parents that may not know anything, or like to kindergarten parents that this is their first kid that they're sending off, and they're realizing that it's going to be a long road and it's going to be a long yet very fast 12 years, and being able to know what they need to do to prepare their child so that they can have a strong education and then a strong work.
Going along with communication, I think my value would be support from everybody that affects the student. So the teachers, the parents, like you guys mentioned, and just everybody that affects the students should be able to support them and guide them to where they want to be in the future.
implementing these possibilities and making sure we learn from past implementation challenges, as well as resourcing things appropriately.
Having the communication as well, but also I agree with the rigor for, especially for the four-year course, but also maybe having alternative math courses for the manufacturing, more of a technical math as a graduation requirement versus Algebra 2.
I think it's important that pathways that we have provide currency for the student post-graduation, so I think that includes some of what's been said already. We need to have flexibility while maintaining rigor. We need to make sure that our students are prepared for the workforce, and the communication piece is key. It's hard to legislate parenting, but it's important that these parents and grandparents understand the opportunities that are out there for the students.
Yeah, in 2 words, I'd probably say equity and currency. In all these conversations, we can't. I get nervous when we start talking about some kids need this and some kids need that. I think that almost always leads to inequality. A strong academic foundation that includes basic proficiency in English and math can't just be for the students who are going directly to college, just like opportunities to apply learning and exposure to the world of work can't just be for those students who are going to go directly into the workplace. The other thing I'll say, and I think I understand where it comes from, but I think I would caution against overcorrection and be careful about the messaging around, college versus non-college. Maybe rather than saying these students are college material, these students are not college material, we should be redefining what college actually looks like and make sure it truly does reflect the whole range of experiences from short-term occupational to certificates, 2-year, 4-year, et cetera. Because I think the one thing that's abundantly clear, if you look during the recession, almost all the jobs that were lost were those with a high school diploma or less. And most of those jobs didn't come back. And so we need to be thinking about job security and stability for our students, not just for today, but 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road.
I think my takeaway from this meeting is the courage around policy, because the way that the charge of the pathway panel, the way the conversations are going are very different. And I'm not saying it's a reflection of the leadership of the policy panel at all. I'm just saying the conversation that has morphed that I think have been healthy is because of the need of staying student-centered and our state needs and the rigor and everything we discussed. But the courage around policy, because of the ripple effect that this panel may decide, goes way beyond the charge of the panel.
So I would say that the basic life skills are vitally important value, and I think they actually, in many ways, are equal to the value of academic skills. And I think to help advance that, was brought up by somebody about career coaches. I think we need more career coaches in our schools in Indiana.
I think I would say preparedness, regardless of whether the student's going to a 4-year college or 2-year college into the job market. I think it's our obligation to ensure that they are prepared to be successful. And there's got to be some way to measure how we're going to ensure that they are prepared.
Mine is the portability. This got talked about today in the public comment about what if a student moves from one regional area to another. So how do we also develop some portability into this? Because having lived in the high mobility world now with schools, certainly understand the transient nature, particularly in a lot of areas. So I think that portability becomes important.
Being one of the only fiscal people here, I do not think the state can pay through your tax dollars for unlimited flexibility. And that's my concern and takeaway. I keep hearing about unlimited flexibility. And there's not enough money for all the things that people have listed in state coffers through your tax dollars. With that, I think, though, every student should be or have at some point in their career, starting early, their own individualized education plan.
I've selected a value that should permeate all of the pathways, and it was called soft skills today. And as I thought about the term soft, it's too soft for me. I think it needs to be changed from soft skills to one I'm going to hereby present, and from now on we'll call it this. It will be essential professional skills, EPS. So I would hope you would join me in all meetings to come. Soft skills is by the wayside. That's the old. The new is essential professional skills.
Or EPS.
EPS, for short.
All right, very good. I really feel the same that I did at the last meeting, or our first meeting, and that is that we should value all career paths equally. And I really appreciated the parent and student comments. I thought they did an outstanding job. And I also acknowledge what Dr. McCormick said. It's very, very important. So we can, if we say we want to value all career paths equally, then we have to also monitor our messaging directly, the direct messaging and indirect, whether it be conversation with students or legislation that supports that we value all careers and career pathways equally.
I think what brought us here, I liked your comment, Dr. McCormick, about talking about a punitive accountability system, because I believe we are in that right now. And so, great discussion today, and I wanted to say we may have a broken accountability system, but education is working, because students, you were awesome today, and I'm taking away so much from the conversation, but I guess I'm still excited about celebrating different pathways as well, and I guess what I'm looking at is next steps success and how that looks different for different kids.
I think for me, I'm just realizing even more today the size of the mountain we're trying to climb. And so challenge, I guess, and how do we shift our paradigm of what success and preparedness looks like while maintaining flexibility and rigor and making things equitable. It's a lot.
No matter what you want to call it, if it's preparedness, the essential professional skills, Dr. McCormick called it professional responsibility, soft skills, success. We all just find success differently, but at the end of the day, when you graduate from high school, when you're going through your life, when you're becoming an adult, you want to make sure that you have those employability skills, that you are able to maintain a job so that you can support yourself, support your family, whatever it may be. You want to make sure that whatever you do to find successes, you can support yourself. You can be an independent part of the workforce. You can be an active citizen. And I think that's what's most important with all of this. No two pathways are the same, and making sure that there's a way that you can combine, like there's a culmination of the pathways, because everybody's different. Everybody's going to choose something different, and no one's going to take the same path. They're going to take up the different opportunities they have, and they're going to see the different resources. So promoting those resources to make sure that students have job readiness, whatever you want to call it. EPS, yes. Make sure that they're ready, that they're going to succeed. I think that's what I'm getting out of the meeting today.
Yeah, I really agree with Rosalind. I really feel that we should focus on flexibility and opportunity. Let's see the bigger picture outside just grades and academia. We should give everyone an equal and fair opportunity to succeed in what is proficient for them. Let them succeed by their own standards of success, not the traditional definition and accusation of what it takes to be successful, such as going to college or getting high test scores.
My value would be flexibility and being able to think differently and adapt and transition as the workforce changes, and to be able to flex the ideas that we have so that it fits from kids with learning disabilities all the way up to kids that want to go for a 4-year or GED, to bend and form around everyone, not just one group.
My value is acknowledgement. Acknowledgement that all students learn differently. Acknowledgement that all students should be valued and provided the same opportunities to be successful post-high school.
And my takeaway is that it's a definite need for career coaches. Not every district has it or every school has that. So if it's mandatory that it be at every school, then let that be. Communicate with parents and also include parents in the decision-making. Don't leave us out. Be around.
Well, my word was partnership. If we partner with parents and the school system, I think kids win no matter what. And so if you've got partnerships between the schools, the parents, and the Department of Education, I think kids will be more successful.
Awesome.